Welcome to this April 23rd work session. Thank you for joining us. Ms. Fields had some other pressing matters and won't be able to join us today for the work session or the school board meeting. And I think we're ready to get started. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. And we're going to start with our meeting. And the first item we have on our agenda is with Mr. Perron, discussion of investment update.
We make a motion.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
About a month ago, we brought you the investment advisor in to talk about our sinking fund from the 2009 seed. And that we have to start that. We should have done it back in 2009. But we are going to go ahead and invest those funds. It was a little bit of a difficult situation because the bonds, you have to find the bond holder, and over a 10-year period, they change. So we found out who it was. We got their consent, and then the bid requests were sent out to a few different banks to get quotes on the investment. And actually, the rates look like they're going up a little bit, so in fact, it took a while to find it. We'll save some money there. So we're looking at it'll be a little over 3%, hopefully, and we'll lock in. When I get everything finalized, then I'll bring everything back. But I just wanted to give an update because we thought we'd have everything done by now. So the shortfall we haven't determined yet, but we'll either invest more now and catch up for 2024, or we could just wait till 2024. But we're going to take the 10 or 11 million that we had set aside, put it in this fund, and then earn the 3 point something percent, and then we'll make some of that back when we owe the money in 24. So that's all I have. I just want to give you a brief update on that sinking fund and the proceeds and where we stand. Any questions?
Any hard copies of that information, or waiting, or where are we? Because
I can get they just told me that they went out and sent out, I believe they have to get 3 quotes.
okay,
And they're in the process of getting
Getting
them back.
those.
When I
Okay.
get all that, it's final.
Okay, you'll bring it.
Include it in the final project. Yeah,
Okay.
paperwork.
but your anticipation is this
Yeah.
is a net positive return? Because I don't have any numbers to look at.
We were,
No?
I don't know how, in the
I don't know.
closing documents from 2009 C, we were to invest those funds immediately and earn 3%.
And we didn't.
And we didn't do that at that time, so from '09 to today, we are getting what the market, the money market rate was, so for a few of those years, we were getting less than 1%. So we now are gonna invest it. And now we're gonna get a little over 3, but it won't catch us up because it's only for 5 years
Couple
versus
years.
the 10.
Okay.
But it is better than just letting it sit where it is.
And we talked about this, and this has been notated somewhere, so this doesn't happen again, whether it was us or a contracted service provider because we're talking a $2 million cost because we didn't have it invested.
Well, it's noted.
I mean, there's nowhere, so I'm trying to make sure there's systems in place so we don't have that issue a second time.
Mr. Wilson?
Typically, that would fall under the auspices of the investment advisor. You normally would rely on them to follow up on that. Now, that's not suggesting that we shouldn't also have some responsibility for it, but normally they handle that as routine. So we would hope that would.
Are we still with that investment advisor?
No,
No.
Okay.
no. And where are we in that track?
Let me, okay, so we're moving along very quickly. On the May 14th board meeting, we will bring bonding, all the documents for the board chair and superintendent to sign. I will be going to New York to talk with the rating agencies. And so when we come back, it's right before the meeting, we will bring everything. But something just changed, and so I just wanted to bring it to your attention and see what the board feels. We were gonna go out for 150, which was 3 projects. The new Davenport Elementary, Mulberry, and the new high school. I was just on the phone and they said, is this number good? Are you gonna change? Do you wanna add more? Are you gonna, is it less? So I asked Ms. Usher and she mentioned that Bartow Phase 2 is moving up. So if we want to include that, we can. And then we would be bonding 200 million versus 150.
An extra 50 million.
43, correct?
Yeah, 42,
Okay.
42, 43.
Round numbers.
So you round
Okay.
Right, around it.
But I need to know probably today. And if I get a consensus, I'll move that because Mike Weiner and Holland Knight will have to change the wording of the agenda for the 14th.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was gonna
Ms.
say,
Cunningham?
if Ms. Forty can
I
make
think
a
that's
comment,
on
then
Ms.
I was gonna
Fortney,
ask Ms. Usher to say something,
Ms.
comment.
Courtney.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for school.
Yes, and we did a tour, and the community is all behind that, and they offered every bit of help that they possibly could to make sure that that happens. It was quite the tour, and I appreciate Ms. Usher, Superintendent Byrd, who else was there? Somebody else, but we walked all over that place, and they are adamant that they want that to be the flagship school when people drive right by. To come to our offices, that our school is top-notch right there. So I'm all for it, of course.
Let me just add one more caveat, and it's Ms. Usher. Will you have that done in 3 years? Because you have a spend down of this money. You might be cutting it close.
We'll be close, but since we have the portables there, we want to keep the portables there. But now, the board has to approve the addition. When I bring back the capital plan in September, if this is what they want to do with the money, and then we'll have to do design and go out for bids again before we can start construction.
Okay, that's phase 2. Mr. Townsend, then back to Ms. Cunningham.
2 questions. What happens if it's not fully done in 3 years? What's the consequence of that?
I'm not 100% sure. I'll get an answer to
It's
that.
with
But
the
we
money.
probably have to use our cash flow or a different source of funding.
And then I guess the second question to that is, if we add this to the bond, what's the, did anybody do the math on what that costs us in debt service over time? So we're taking it, what's the backside cost and stuff that we can do?
Yeah, I think Angela has it 2 different ways. If we pay as you go or you bond. And so we have how much it will be over the next 15 years, the annual payment. If we do 150 or 200, and then we have well within the capacity to do that. But we can get those figures as to, and that's what they're really working on for the rating agencies and all that. How much you're going to be paying out, how much are you getting in of sales tax each year?
Right, yeah, I'm just trying to
The
get into.
document, Mike, he had all that, but he wanted the final numbers from us to give us the specific. There was one of the graphs where he talked about in the draft document that he sent us.
Okay.
So we'll have all that.
You'll have that on your May 14th meeting, a week before. It'll give you the debt service payments and how it all.
Right, but you said we have to approve, essentially approve this today for you to be
No,
able to do
well, I was
it.
saying, if I get consensus,
needs
that
a
when we bring
consensus.
200, if I bring 200 million on May 14th, you're all okay with that?
I have a question.
Ms.
Okay,
Cunningham?
so my question is, because Ms. Usher will be bringing that information in September, right? The design, whatever you just said, all of that for us, then would it be more advantageous because of the debt service that we're gonna be paying for 6 months without actually starting? Would it make more sense to wait on that 43 million or whatever the amount is and wait 6 months to a year?
You could, but then you're gonna pay the cost of issuance all over again.
All over again, so it makes,
It's like
that's what I'm
you're gonna refi your
asking,
house. You
Same
wanna
thing.
do it all at,
at the same
and
time.
not,
I guess what I'm asking
Back to
is,
Mr. Townsend.
can you tell me off the top of your head, if we do it for 150 or we do it for 196, what is the yearly back-end difference on those
It's gonna
numbers?
be
Like,
between 15 and 20 million. Low end 15 would be, because you're gonna pay 10 years of 15 million at 150. then you have some insurance, so it'd probably be 17 on a 150 and 22 on 200, something.
And what's the overall amount that the tax generates? That's taken out of what amount?
Total over the years?
Yeah. Well, what's the yearly projection?
It's
45.
roughly,
40,
yeah,
45.
yeah.
Okay. So it's 45 minus 17 versus
Right.
45 minus 22.
That's 22.
Those are rough.
No, I get that's rough
Yeah.
rough is what I'm looking for.
Mr. Wilson?
So I'm a little confused. I thought we talked about using impact fees for some of this, and there's 17 million a year in impact fees.
The numbers are similar, so yeah, you could use either or.
Okay.
We didn't talk about that.
So,
Some you will not be able to use impact because if they're not
Capacity.
growth, if they're not building
building.
classrooms because of growth, you have to use the sales tax.
tax.
So most of the construction we are doing is for growth.
so what is the annual payment we're gonna be making? 22, did you say?
Yeah, it's around 20,
200,000.
maybe not.
So I guess I'm confused. Were you talking about the cost of that or just the overall debt service?
I'm wanting to know what the difference is if we add Bartow in. What is the backside that we have left to do project? It sounds like that it's roughly a $5 million a year difference. Now that does, I am following up on your impact fee question. The new high school, I thought was going to be paid for with impact fees. Is that?
That one is strictly for growth, so you could use either or.
But we won't have enough impact fees, so we'll have to split fund it.
Oh, that's what it is. So you're getting the money now. We can pay ourselves back for it in a sense on the back end. Is that,
With the other
that
projects like Davenport and Mulberry, those have to be sales tax. And in addition to the new high school, we have a number of capacity addition projects that we have to use impact fee for. For example, Albert, we're doing a classroom addition, and so the impact fee will be used for those projects, or to purchase property for new schools we have in the capital plan, because those are for growth. But for like Mulberry, Davenport, the modernization project will have to be sales tax. But if they're not for growth, it's the renovating those schools.
so in a sense, at least on the new high school, some amount of this 45 minus 17 gets backed out again because you're putting impact fee revenue into it, right? If it's purely on, because the 45 is not sales tax plus impact fee revenue, right? So what we're bonding is solely based on sales tax revenue, right? It's solely paid for by the sales tax.
We're pledging that, but you can use different funding sources.
Okay. That's helpful. So we can pump sales tax into
Banks
that.
would want to see a more stable revenue source, and that is sales tax versus impact fees.
But we can service it with,
No.
okay, all right.
Because-
Mr. Wilson, I see you.
No, I do think it would be helpful if there was a big picture of the total amount that we're gonna be bonding, and then over what period of time, and then how we're gonna pay that back.
You have all,
If we
May
could,
14th,
So we
right?
can provide that.
okay,
I thought we gave you that, but we can definitely do it.
okay,
We have it.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we need to reach
Yeah, do you need a consensus?
Consensus.
So do we have a consensus of the board?
Or on the room.
Organizationally, that's kind of what we wanted stuff up front for, and for the agenda to document when we're giving consensus, because right now this is a discussion piece on the agenda, and trying to organize these meetings for documentation purposes. I would rather have that up front before giving consensus. But I understand you're at a time difference now. This has been asked multiple times.
Is it?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Townsend?
Can we agenda it and take a vote authorizing him to move forward tonight? Would that be, I mean, is that dealing with what, does that deal with what you want?
I don't know that we need to do that. It just needs to be documented that we were asked today for a consensus on this information, which we don't have in writing, that they're gonna provide after we give consensus.
Mr. Wilson?
I think what they're asking for is just, they don't want to put it all together, bring it forward, and have us say, yeah, we're not interested in that, which we may still do.
Right.
So they're just really looking for a sense of
I
where
guess
we
it would
stand
be, I
on
don't
it.
want to surprise you on
May
the
14th.
14th and say it's 200,000, 200 million now, and you say, why? And I'm bring it in because it's, you know, I heard that project wanted to be completed, moved up 6 or 7 years in the long-term plan. So if we're gonna do it, this is the ramification.
So, and we just, I mean, if you're not comfortable with it, it's okay to say no.
I just don't want to move this beyond, and the history of asking for things at these work sessions and getting them later hasn't worked out for us. I still have a list from the last work session that I don't have information on. Organizationally, I would like it up front. If the board believes that we should move on this for time purposes, I'm not opposed to that. But we have got to start moving organizationally to things listed on the agenda as discussion and/or we will need consensus, and here is what we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
This is just an organizational piece. It's because it comes back later and nobody has a record of what we were doing. And we're multiple months back on minutes. So
if we,
this is just,
if we flag it for consent, does that work or no?
I would think so.
Want me to do that?
I mean,
I think you're just taking a
No,
consensus.
I think we
here.
just need a
You just need a
consensus.
It's
consensus
kind of
here
staff
to move
direction,
forward.
right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of
just
staff
giving them
direction.
direction.
Because
So,
we actually
let
vote
me-
on it in
and-
May.
You don't
Right.
Ms.
vote until
Cunningham,
May. It
what
doesn't come
do
till
you
May.
feel about it? Are you ready to
Yeah,
move forward
doesn't
with it?
come till May.
Ms. Cunningham?
Are you asking my opinion on the
On the
consensus
consensus,
vote?
yes.
I am, yes, I would
Okay.
vote yes to give my vote or my consensus for them to continue to investigate, but I want hard documents. I'm a paper person, I'm sorry, to look at the numbers, and if there's more discussion and questions, I have the opportunity to do that.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Reynolds?
Yes, consensus for you to bring it forward to us
Right.
as 200 million in May.
Mr. Townsend?
Yeah.
Yes, but can I ask something?
Sir?
I mean, yes, by the way. But Mr. Perone just said we're moving this project for Bartow High School up 6 to 7 years, but when I went back and tried to find all this stuff, it actually started in 2021, phase 2, and then it got moved to 2025 in September of 2018. So,
I can clarify
Kinda, sorta.
that.
and I'm just,
I heard it was 27.
It was 27.
okay, but I just wanted to clarify for the Bartow community that's watching right now, so.
Okay, so,
Which is why they were asking to move
Yes,
that
ma'am.
in there, so to go for 2021.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Perone, you have consensus to move forward with it, but just what I'm hearing from the board is that there will be questions and folks are going to expect some answers.
Yeah, just,
Yes, sir.
So
sorry.
we'll put it on both the workshop and board meeting, so you'll have a full,
Read back to them.
with bond council and then financial advisor.
Okay. Ms. Reynolds, then I think I have Ms.
I know a lot of
Collins.
times with the budget stuff, we don't necessarily get it until we're in the board meeting because those numbers are always changing. If we can get this, the documentation, even if it's a hard copy, but either to have those numbers as a hard copy or attached to the agenda item where we can see them before we come in, mainly so that we can ask questions beforehand if we have questions,
That's
so
right.
that we don't surprise you at
Yeah,
a work
I
session,
believe-
that would be very helpful.
I believe our deadline is the first of May. They have set a date of April 30th.
Okay,
They're trying to hold to that, and then we'll have it, you'll have more than a week for it.
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Townsend, then back to Ms. Cunningham.
Yeah, just to echo Ms. Miller's point. I mean, I think that kind of there's an obvious question that comes up in bringing this to us, which is what's the ramification? Like, which is what I was asking. If we can take a second to think through what those obvious questions will be and just have it. I mean, like if we're making a change and there's going to be a consequence to it, just have the consequence available to us. I mean, I want to advance this for Bartow. I think we owe it to them, but yeah, I think it's
I think
pretty
we all
easy thing
do.
to fix.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Cunningham?
Mine was the same as Ms. Reynolds, I just want to see it prior to walking in here, so I have some time to look at it. Please.
And I just, so you know, I had to send an email to Mike Weiner at Holland and Knight to see if I could even ask this question. I just got that response about an hour ago, so.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I didn't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm staying, right?
No, we have Charlie next.
Oh, I wanted to come
I know you're anxious. The next item that's coming for you, that comes before you each year, is the charter school projected enrollment for the upcoming school year. And Dr. X will come with his team.
Good afternoon. Charter School Office has put together a document for an overview for the requested additional seats at the charter schools that are requesting additional seats. Kind of like to break those up into two different groups, if that's okay. The top group with the Montessori, Polk Collegiate, and Ridgeview. I'd like to ask Ms. Bridges and Ms. Amato, the acting senior director, to talk about that group up top first, and then we'll talk about the bottom group. So, go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So as you can see, the top group, it is divided into sections. So the first three, Magnolia, Polk Creek Collegiate, and Ridgeview Global, are all considered high-performing charter schools. State statute allows that they increase their enrollment annually, as long as they do not reach the capacity of their building. As you can see on the spreadsheet, Magnolia is requesting 7, Polk Creek Collegiate is requesting 19. And Ridgeview Global, please note they are rolling their 8th graders into 9th grade. So that will now be a K-9 center, so that is why they are asking for 123 seats.
So they're considered high-performing, all three of those, and they have the capacity. I feel very comfortable about those three.
Are there any questions regarding the high-performing charters, the first? Mr. Townsend?
Just the building capacity is 1257, and they want to go to 1380. I don't want to make sure I'm.
So the elementary part of the building, Ridgeview Global used to be an elementary school. They have since increased and they have built a middle school component across the street. So that houses 525 occupancy. So we did keep it separate just to distinguish between the former elementary building and the new middle school.
But so the real capacity is like 1700.
1782, yes, sir.
Ms. Cunningham?
And that's to add, as you said, to go up to a 9th grade unit in the beginning of August for the 1920 school year. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions on the first group?
Are they gonna go to 10th, 11th? Okay.
We currently have their governing board minutes that shows 9th and 10th grade. 11th and 12th grade have not been discussed at this point.
But we do have the board minutes.
Yes.
Yay.
Any other questions on this?
Okay, probably looking at the next group, I would take them probably individual because each situation is pretty unique. The first one there is Bach North. The current enrollment for that school is 200. The PTM that we agreed upon was 200. They're requesting an additional 200 seats. The concern that I have with this is being assured that they have the capacity and that they've secured a facility for that. So that's my concern with that particular one.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Reynolds?
Okay, but that 200 that they're requesting in addition, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be to add the 7th grade component to it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and tell me,
I'm still concerned, I want to be assured that they do have the facilities.
so it's a facilities question?
Yes, ma'am. Just ensuring that that has been addressed.
Yeah, right now their facility can hold 218 students, so obviously if they add that, they have to have an additional facility. And at this point, while they're looking at a number of options, they haven't identified a facility that would hold the full 400.
And this is requesting, once again, for August of 2019, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I would suggest that if the board approves that it be communicated that that approval is contingent upon evidence of a suitable facility with a certificate of occupancy that allows them to do that.
My question was similar to those lines, but is it possible for us to table it until they can bring us where they're going to be for the next?
I don't know
what
that there's a deadline to approve this. This one sounds like it's sort of organic, and one thing is contingent on the other. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest to them that we need this before we approve it. We could also, once again, do a tentative approval subject to evidence submitted by the school that they have obtained an appropriate facility with that capacity. That they are not authorized to enroll those additional students until such time as they have secured that facility.
I personally am not extremely comfortable with doing a contingency plan with Lake Wales Charter. So I will not be voting to agree to this until they can show us where they're going to be for housing the rest of the students, just in full disclosure.
Carolyn, I don't recall a deadline in the statute for this to happen. I mean, obviously, we play it close because,
Right,
you know,
we do it
August
in
is
the-
right around the way.
So we do it in the spring so that they can move forward with acceptances and enrollment pieces. But certainly, there's no statutory requirement. I think that they could move forward with the enrollment process without that. It might not be a bad idea to ask them to communicate that in their processes, that they are in the midst of a building search that would require them to.
How do we affect that from a practical perspective, though? I'm confused about how would we make that happen from a practical perspective? Getting back to us. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Let me answer it.
I apologize.
Okay, so the way it's been done in the past is by us giving them the go-ahead, then they're able to take that information, go to a financial institution, and get money to be able to move forward, whether it's renting, purchasing, or whatever. So that's the only thing that I want us to keep in mind. You know, I understand if you don't have a facility, where are you gonna put our kids? I get that. But at the same time, I'm not sure where that fine line is, but I know that it's very important that financial institutions hear from us that we are positive, but provided that there is a facility, but sometimes they need that assurance before they go out and lend them money to move forward.
And just to answer your question, Mr. Wilson, if they're accepting applications, then in the letter that would go back to parents, that letter should reflect that while you are, let's say, accepted as a sixth grader, it is contingent upon the acquisition and occupancy permits for a building that could house those students.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fortney?
Has anybody from the charter school communicated with us the possibilities that they would have buildings available to them?
They are looking at a number of buildings. Part of it is a split building, so in other words, they could stay in their current building for 200 and then look at another building located nearby for another 200. So that's one possibility they're looking at. They're looking at a number of possibilities at this point in time.
So they'd be, just to follow up, they would be not surprised if we have that contingent in it, because they're
I think
looking.
they would expect that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Reynolds, I saw your hand back.
That answered part of my question.
Okay.
So-
Mr. Townsend?
So they've been told to perhaps expect us, and there's been discussion with them about this?
Not in terms of a contingency, but it is standard for us if there isn't a building available, particularly with first-year charters, for example, that any enrollment is contingent on a building
So
being
we,
approved
so
and
we've
secured.
used language like this before?
Absolutely,
All right,
absolutely.
all right. And on the enrollment letter, what happens if they don't include that in the enrollment letter when we ask them to do it? I mean, is there a consequence to that? Like,
Well,
is there?
the consequence, okay, fair question. The consequence would be, and this was a long time ago, but if you recall, we had a charter school that we approved that was ready to open, and then their facility didn't pass inspections, and they had to send out notifications literally days before school started. And that reflects very poorly on that school. That was not a school that came back the following year and tried to open, just because parents were so upset because they thought they had everything set, and then they couldn't move forward. So I think it would reflect poorly on them if they chose not to do that. I don't think
So it's-
that would be a problem.
So it's more of a, okay. I mean, can we maybe ask them to send us a copy of their standard and send out, and to verify that happens?
Ms. Reynolds?
Is their original contract that we approved has that they'll 400 seats for year 2? Would that not work for, I'm just trying to figure out why in the past year this hasn't been addressed, if that
question.
makes sense.
Not a surprise. It's like-
Because it's not a surprise when this was approved over a year ago and they
Yes.
knew that
That's my concern.
August of 2019, they were gonna have 200 more students and there's no building.
Correct.
So I don't see a reason they can't use the contract that we have in place to say we're approved for 200 students, but, you know, I don't know, I feel like it's our due diligence as a board, if they don't have the 200 seats, that we're not gonna give them the 200 students to fill the 28 seats that they have left, would be my perspective. But if there's a reason that they can't use that original charter agreement,
Well, their original
show that
charter
they'll-
agreement
they'll have-
showed the 200 for this year, and we approved them for 400 next year. But
Right.
of course, anything in the application, that's prior to a building being identified
Right.
and all of that. So there was a good faith expectation on our part that if you ask for 400 seats, you're going to have those
Right.
400 seats available. This is a group that's looked at a number of options, and so some of those have not materialized, but it certainly is an ongoing concern, as Dr. Iggs has said, that it's April and they haven't finalized something.
yeah, I just don't see why they can't use that document to show that they can have 400 kids next year, as opposed to needing us to approve it.
Yeah, that's-
Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Can you put yourself in their head and ask what the difference is? What does this do that they don't already get to do?
So if we have approved the 400 seats, then they can go to a lender and say, we have this assurance on a board action. If not, they have an application that says they're approved for 400, but there hasn't been board action on that particular item. Does it make a difference to a financial lender? I can't answer that. Certainly, anything they can get in writing that says you've been approved carries more weight than, here's an application that we filed 2 years ago. Would it make a difference in an approval? I don't know that, and my sense is they're not ready to build at this point in time anyway. They're looking at a 1-year temporary solution until they're ready to build, at which point in time those 400 students either would or would not be in seats.
I think the question or the fine point is this. If you take Ridgeview Global, their application is that they would roll those grades up. That's what it says. Each year we will roll the grades up. But you have to still have school board approval of the PTM. And the reason why you gotta do that is because we start paying in the new fiscal year on the projected PTM. That's kind of the scary part there. So yes, the school board has approved for Bach North to roll these grades each year, but each year they still have to come back and request an increase in PTM. Because we actually will pay on the projected pupil enrollment. So that's the difference. Yes, they have an application that is approved to move up these grades, but the school board still has to approve the payment, which you would start payment before the school opened and the students come to fruition. So that's the piece there that is the grade point or the fine point in it. The application is approved to roll the grades, but the school board still approved the PTM to roll each year.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Fortney.
Okay, so I think I can answer you've known since September and here we are in April, because I don't think they realized what the school district, how it was working with McLaughlin to try to turn that school into something different than it is today. I think there was an expectation based on school grades that McLaughlin may become available. That's been discussed openly. So I'm just answering that question, right or wrong, but I believe that's where that is. I mean, it was brought to us. I had no knowledge of that, and I live in that community. A couple, maybe 2 months ago? Was it the February work session? So I think that is what, maybe there was an expectation, right or wrong, that they might have access to being able to put Bach North and not have to spend the money on a new building site. And then when that hit the newspapers, if you will, after our work session, certainly then everybody's talking, right? I mean, I'm just being honest. So that's why the wait. And now it's like, oh boy, here we go. There's a whole different plan involved. So here we are. So just so others may know that.
Ms. Fortney?
Dr. Yates, this is basically state statute. We have to do this right because of what you just said, to answer Mr. Townsend's question with the PTM. That is the state statute,
The
so,
approval
Right.
comes for the PTM through you.
so it's kind of a mute.
So,
Increase of.
so PDM is a separate concept from what the contract envisions. It's
You basically approved them to become a middle school with the grades that are involved and the projected enrollment, or projected roll, but you still have to approve the capacity or the, just like we did last year with Lake Wells High School, you still would have approved any increase of their current enrollment.
So can I follow up? So,
Yes.
so if we grant the 400 with contingency, but contingent upon getting the school, and they don't get the school, are we gonna end up paying for some amount of the extra 200 at some point? Say we start paying, like, is that, I mean, would we be
There's one of
paying,
these that we-
for?
Yeah, there's one of these we're going to discuss in just a minute that's a real concern for me like that. If you're asking, my concern is just I would like to know the assurance of where they intend to put the students. I think it'll come to fruition. I just would, and they could address that within the next 30 days of what's the plan for the building for where you'd put the students. And I'm fully aware that they have several different options, but that would just make a little more sense on my part to.
Well, let me restate that. If we give them 400, do we have to pay on 400
We're
no
going to
matter
start
what?
paying on 400, yes, sir.
When? On what day?
July 1.
July 1.
Whether or not they have
Yes, sir.
the school.
Yes,
If
sir.
we do it contingent, though, do we pay? If it's this is subject to you having a building.
It's-
So the way the law reads is you have to have your building 15, it's either 15 or 7 days, I think it's 15 days before the start of school. So it is conceivable that we could make a July 1 payment on 400. They don't have the building, and then we would adjust that back down. So it's not like they get the money and they keep it. But here's what the downside of that is they get the money, they start spending that money, and then suddenly, it's not that you're cut back to 200, it's that you're cut back 200 plus, we're gonna take the remaining, the overpayment and spread it out over the remaining 8 or 9 months and recoup that money back, which if they haven't planned or budgeted appropriately can really be a hardship for the school. That's one of the reasons we try to do this so early, is so that the budget that we send out July 1 is reflective of their actual enrollment and doesn't require a dramatic adjustment.
Okay. Mr. Perron?
She just said what I was
Okay.
gonna say.
Okay. Ms. Miller, then Ms. Reynolds?
That's how I understood it to work in the past, because this has happened before where we've had a projected student amount. We start paying it, they don't meet that expectation, and we adjust. The hardship is on them if they're overspending
Correct.
the projection.
That's the limit.
Yeah.
It is, but we're still the entity that has to ensure that they're financially solid. And you're talking about doubling the enrollment for a particular school. So, and again, I think they would be able to address, I think they can address this issue with housing within the next, for the school within 30 days.
Ms. Reynolds?
Would it be possible for us to, if we don't approve it, to send them a letter basically saying, this has not been approved because you don't have these seats? Once you have a building secured, we will approve this?
But it was May.
Or is
So
that?
we're bringing this just into our discussion.
Right.
So it'll be vote, you all will vote.
So this would be on May
at the next one.
I mean, could we send them a letter now, basically saying,
Sure.
this is not going to be approved unless, would that be something anyone had an interest in?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to. This all gives me a headache. I swear.
Let the process take place, it will. They're gonna have a facility in town,
Well, I mean,
across the street.
give them. I mean, can we revisit this in a month? I mean, is there any
Well,
reason
yeah,
why
We vote on it
Yeah, we
next
vote
month.
on
Right,
it.
so I
Okay.
think what's,
Okay.
I
Okay.
think we'll
Mr.
know.
Townsend, to help you, I think because it would have come back to the board for a vote in a month. So in 30 days, if they can let us know whether before that, where those kids are
Exactly.
housed, we can get it all. But they have to let us know. And then what I'm hearing, you want it in writing as well, what's going to happen, which we can get that. And if we can secure that in 30 days, then we can get that out to you prior to the meeting. I don't know if that helps you or not.
I'm not sure anything helps me, but that's close enough, I guess.
Mr. Wilson?
Well, I don't want to reiterate what Ms. Cunningham has already said, and twice about the financing, but I'm in favor of approving it. So I don't have any problems with that. I think they need that to move forward.
Mr. Townsend?
I mean, I would probably support the contingent approval a month from now. Like, let's try to get them to make this moot, please, and then I'll have to make a decision about whether, you know, if that's the responsible thing to do or not. But I would like for them to find a place for it.
Ms. Fortney?
I like Ms. Merle's idea. And Dr. Hicks, what would you suggest?
I think that they'll be able to, as long as we give them in writing, a notice to just tell us, you know, where you're going to actually house the students, I think they'll send that back to us, and I think we'll be good to go. I really do.
Any questions? Okay, so we'll look for that information to come back prior to
Yes, ma'am.
May
Oh, yes.
14th from
Yes,
them.
ma'am.
So the board can know. Okay.
So then, the next two we have, Polk State Lakeland Gateway Charter High School. They're requesting an increase of 23 students. It does align with their approved contract and application. And Victory Ridge is also requesting an increase of 15, and that also does match their approved contract and application.
Any questions on those two?
On the backside, we have the last three. These three sites are requesting more than what is currently in their approved contract and application. We have Cypress Junction, which is requesting an increase of 18 students. I feel that Cypress Junction can handle that. They're a small enough location. I don't see that being a burden. I feel confident that that would be a successful increase. We also have Discovery High School, which is requesting an increase of 225, bringing their PTM to 925. Based on their contract for this upcoming 19-20 school year, their approved contract and application indicated 850 students. And
So this particular one gives me some concerns.
yeah.
And again, it goes back to starting July 1, we would actually start making payments on the 925 to them. I think that this number needs to be revisited. The PTM that they requested this year was for 700. Their enrollment as of now is 677, so they did not reach that. I'm just not, I'm not sure that approving this 225 increase is the, I just think we need to be mindful that we're, the financial position we're allowing themselves to be put into if we do this particular one at that particular rate, and it's not in line with the contract.
Ms. Reynolds?
For last year, did we reduce what they
Yes, ma'am.
had? So they requested 800 last year, and we reduced it to 700.
I believe they requested, their contract indicated 750.
Okay,
And I believe that was agreed upon to the 700.
and they still were not able to meet that by about 25 students.
Correct.
Ms. Miller?
Do they give you, what is there, if they couldn't reach that number from the last year's projection, is there, I mean, have they given you a written statement on why they perceive they'll gain that kind of student population?
You know, they, this is where they opened a new building, right?
Yes, they would.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean, I think that in their, they see themselves, you know, being able to fill up the classrooms that they built and everything. Again, I'm just a little concerned with that number that we would start paying on July 1. And based on the fact that they didn't meet the 700, and they sure wouldn't have met what they actually asked for when they first come to us the first time. That's my concern.
Mr. Townsend and back to Ms. Reynolds.
Additionally, so to clarify, what you're recommending 850? Is that what you're recommending?
I would go with what the approved contract is.
What is it? 800. Is it 800?
It says
The approved
850
contract
there.
is 850.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta tell you, the way I've seen Discovery do business, there's a whole bunch of kids they could have kept in their system if they wanted them in this high school. And I'm not inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt, so I'll support sticking with what the contract is.
Ms. Reynolds and back to Ms. Fortney.
I actually would prefer to keep it no more than 750. But I wanted to ask, if they get to 750 at the beginning of the school year, could they come back and say they can't come back until next year? Okay. But yeah, I wouldn't say go above 750, mainly because, I mean, at 225, that's how many classrooms that they're gonna be hiring teachers for and things, and then that's gonna come back to us eventually, that I don't feel comfortable giving them more than that. We see too many students coming back as it is, that I don't think they're gonna fill that many seats.
And I think what they're looking at is they're rolling 331 eighth graders, but the way that their lottery works for high school, they have to reapply, and then those students are weighted, but it's based on the number of seats available. So they're waiting for us to tell them the number of seats that are available, and then they would fill those high school seats first.
Do you know how many they have 9th, 10th, 11th that are gonna be rolling up as well?
Yeah.
Yes, I've got that. They currently have 229 ninth graders, and this was pulled on April 17th, so this is pretty. They have 213 10th graders, and they have 167 11th graders, and 56 seniors that will be graduating. So when I did the math, when I removed the 56 students who are graduating, that leaves them 609 students in their high school component that for next year. When you roll in the 8th graders, that puts them, if they accepted, if 100% of their 8th graders apply, that would put them sitting at 920. So that's where they came up with the 925.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how they
Right.
pulled that number. So based on those mathematics, that's how they generated the increase of 225 students, so they could potentially accept and roll all of those 8th graders.
Okay. Ms. Rhodes, you got a follow-up to that one?
Yeah, do we have any type of statistics from previous years, how many of their 8th graders they've been rolling up, or what percentage apply? Is there any way to get that information? I mean, if 20% of their 8th graders are typically applying.
There's not that many.
So this is historically the same way it's been the whole time, so there's not anything new. The only thing new is there's a gym in the classrooms there.
Correct. Yes.
I
Say
couldn't
that
hear
louder,
that.
Dr.
Can you say that louder?
So, Discovery Middle has not asked for an increase, so there's not like there's an increase in the 8th grade that's there. It's historically, that's the way it's rolled. But in their mind, the way they're looking at it, but keep in mind that this is the way the pattern has been. Some of the students that are currently at Discovery Middle will make choices other than Discovery High School.
Sure.
And this, I believe, is their first graduating class of seniors, so it was a rolling progression. They're adding the upper grades as the progression rolled.
I think it's on Courtney.
Two things. It appears by the numbers that they decrease kids all the way up to senior. Interesting, is the point of reference. And then, could somebody clarify again why they're not hitting their enrollment? I thought I heard it and then I missed it. It was Sarah Beth's question earlier.
So two things. The historical, their senior class was very small. They did that deliberately. They didn't have a building when they first opened.
Okay.
So the reason their senior class is so small is because they only took, I believe, 70 or 65 students that first year. Then since then, they've been rolling additional students up, but they haven't rolled up their full 8th grade class. In other words, they had limited seats. In terms of why they didn't fill their enrollment, they certainly had the opportunity to do so.
So all those kids got absorbed back into.
Right, they leave the 8th grade and they come back to us. Sometimes they come back to us over the summer, which is when we would love to have them, and they start 9th grade. Sometimes they come to us 11 weeks before the end of the school year, or 6 weeks before the end of the school year. And that's not best for students, certainly, and
Correct.
it's difficult for us.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Well, seeing as how they are rolling students up from 8th grade, I can understand where not everybody, I mean, we all have those choices at the end of the middle school career, if you will. And we have lots of options in the Polk County School District system with our academies and different things. So I don't think every child that's in 8th grade we could say is gonna be pegged to go to that particular, I mean, it could be, but I think that's very slim. So, looking at it with the 925, I see that with our contract, we have 850 in there. So if we did the 850, realizing that the 56 seniors are going away, you're gonna have an average of somewhere between, I don't know, say 200 kids per class. They're gonna need at least an enrollment of 800 to maintain what they've been doing. Other than that one, I consider the senior class of 56 perhaps a startup and maybe an anomaly to the numbers. The rest are in 167, but then 229, so say an average of 200. So I would like to see us consider that, because if I've been at a school all that time and I want to roll up, I shouldn't be denied maybe that opportunity. I don't know. That's just my feel. So I would say somewhere between 800 to 850 is I think where we ought to be, just to keep that flow appropriate for those families.
Ms. Miller, I see your hand.
You did. There was a couple of things that have been answered, but their lack of enrollment now, I agree that the max I think we should do is the contract. They do. I mean, I get lots of calls where the kids aren't going back or they're asked to leave mid-year. I don't know that they might project that increase. I don't even know what the students they have now that they'll see that increase. So I would, my opinion and/or input would be not to exceed the contract.
They currently have 451 applications that they accepted during their February open.
They also take acceptance and then send letters and reject their acceptance letters. So it's difficult to really find out how many kids will be there.
Right.
Ms. Fortney?
I just find it interesting, the request for increases to support the strong interest and support from the local community. It doesn't really, the numbers don't reflect that to me. I'm just saying,
Mr.
but
Townsend?
that's their reason.
Is there a consequence to if we were to go below the contract agreement on the PTM? Is there a way for them to say no, you can't do that? How does the law work on that?
Wes, could you weigh in on that?
The statute contemplates that the number will be set by the school in conjunction with the sponsor. I presume that if we did not reach agreement, it would be like any other contract dispute, and the DOE would offer to mediate that dispute. And if we were unable to reach an agreement, it is something that could end up presented to an administrative law judge in the Division of Administrative Hearings.
But so what you're saying is the original contract number isn't exactly like we've agreed to a number 850 in the contract, but that's not actually binding to like the PTM number that defines.
Well, I think that was in contemplation. You're asking what happens if we go below 850 in what we agreed to.
Right.
Same thing. I think they take their case to DOE and they assign a mediator. And we talk about it, and if we don't agree, we end up before an administrative law judge on contract disputes.
I mean, I'm inclined to give them what we got in the contract and just move on.
Carolyn, does that reflect your understanding?
Absolutely. I think we're in a much stronger position if we give them what they asked for and what we agreed to in the contract. Because at that point in time, it's not a contract dispute. They're asking for something above and beyond.
Right.
The last one is Lake Wales High School. We had a lot of discussion about this one last year. Last year, the school board gave them above and beyond what was requested to, I think, the maximum of dish capacity. So last year, they requested, we actually gave them a $1,650 with the PTM that we agreed upon. Current enrollment is 1,567. They're asking for 30 more, an increase of 30 more, and actually that's going to require something with facilities if we continue to increase for a portable or something there, but they have not met their capacity that was requested from last year.
Ms. Reynolds?
Do they have a wait list currently?
They do, and I do not have that information, but I can provide it for you.
If we could get an answer from them too as to why, if they have a wait list, why if they have 83 seats available, there's a wait list, that would be also very helpful information.
Do you have the breakdown like you did for Discovery? Like how many eighth graders, when you do it, are rolling up ninth,
I do
10th?
not, but I will be more than happy to.
Might as well have that as compared, if you don't
So you
mind.
want their
Lake Wales.
9 through 12 enrollment?
Yeah, I'm just wanting to see if all charter schools lose 10 kids, all the way up.
Ms. Reynolds?
I just think it's important to note that last July 31st meeting, we gave them 120 seats because they told us they had 120 Lake Wales kids on their waiting list. And before school started, we had 2 Bartow High School football players that live in the Bartow zone that ended up at Lake Wales High School. So were 2 kids that didn't get picked up to go to Lake Wales High School that were on that waiting list that lived in Lake Wales, or they magically, these Bartow High School kids had Lake Wales addresses somewhere. So I just think that that's important to remember as we're looking at further increasing them, and making sure that they're truly addressing that Lake Wales community first, and any kid that lives across the street from Lake Wales High School should be able to go there if that's where they so choose.
Any other questions?
Oh. Back for Polk State, Lakeland Gateway, do we provide the buses for that?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, okay.
Ms. Townsend?
So to Sarah's point, what form, so we're gonna vote on what? What's gonna come for us to vote on? Like for the Lake Wales thing, if we just wanna hold the line with what we gave them last year. What is is there a recommendation, I mean, that we're gonna act on, or is that what your recommendation is?
So, I was gonna say, so we're gathering input from you today and
Okay.
listening to your discussions, and then we will craft a recommendation on each of these and then move forward so that you can look at that at the board meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if there's not a good explanation for why those extra 83 seats aren't being used that we gave them, I mean, I'm not against
So if
retracting some of those, but.
So
Miss-
prior to
ahead.
me taking over from when Melissa Brady left, there were conversations, this request came back in February because the charter schools are required to submit their request for increased budget first. And the question that was asked was an explanation of your request for 30 additional seats when the approved enrollment of 1650 has not been reached. And this was the response received from Lake Wales High School. We can only serve 1,580 to 1,600 students with the current staff. Hiring another cohort of teachers will allow us to serve an additional 120 to 150 students. But in order for us to hire 7 new teachers, we will need additional portables that will allow us to serve 1,700 to 1,730 students. And then it goes on. So currently, based on their explanation, they cannot even adequately serve the 1,650 due to short of staff.
So I think, Mr. Townsend, to your point, what the staff want to do is make sure that we present to you what was given last year and what was not met based on that PTM, as they're still requesting additional seats this year. So they can go back to them and craft a message of, we gave a PTM and that was not met, and you have the waiting list, and those students are still sitting on the waiting list. Ms. Reynolds?
So, just to clarify what you're saying, Candy, the 16, even for them to meet the 1650, they're saying that we need to go in and put portables because that's our property, correct? So if we add additional seats, they're saying they would not fill them unless there were also facility changes at the school.
They are currently saying, based on their staff, they can serve 1580 to 1600 students, correction,
Based on the staff,
based on
Not
the
the
staff.
facility.
not the facilities.
Well, that comes later.
They're still in the board.
In order to increase and add another cohort
Right.
of teachers to serve the additional students, then they would need portables that would allow us to serve additional students.
So Candy, what you're saying, with this increase in students, they will need portables to
Yes, ma'am.
accommodate them?
Correct.
But not for the 30 more, for the additional from the
money back?
1580 you said to the 1650?
Yes, ma'am, that is all that they can currently serve based on their staff.
Sorry, you said 1580 to 1600 is what they can currently serve?
Mhm.
So there's still, even with that number, 33 seats that are not filled that they could currently be serving. I'm just clarifying it. That's just saying it out loud.
All these numbers and math, right?
Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Fortney?
So, as I recall last year, we actually asked them to increase their enrollment. And what I heard from the Lake Wales community, from Lake Wales High School, was that even though technically they have capacity, it meant making some changes that weren't productive to the learning environment. So I think if someone were here to represent them, they would say, these are portables that are left, that we needed from last year, when you increased the enrollment last year for us. So I think they've been asking for those portables simply based on last year's numbers that we increased.
Dr. Aches, did someone from facilities walk, because I think that when they asked about the portables,
Mrs. Bird,
Yeah.
we had a meeting with them last year after the capacity was increased. And we found that they still had space even at the 1650 because the capacity of 1732 is at 95%.
That was
So
my
that was
question.
already taken into account. So we told them that we would not be able to give them additional portables when we met with them last year.
Could I
Okay,
address
say that again. Tell me that again. Say that again. Yeah.
We had a meeting with
I got
Lakeville
that.
staff.
So,
And they wanted more portables.
right,
And we looked at their utilization and the use of their school, and there was not a need, we did not see it as being justified. Because with their capacity the capacity of 1732 is already taking in the utilization factor, so it's 95% of their fish capacity. And with the 1650, they're still under their total capacity, so we told them no at that meeting. And I thought that was it until I read about it again.
okay. So we've determined by visiting the campus and looking
Meeting with them.
that they still have, now, okay, so our facilities, I mean, comparing apples to apples, so go to one of our high schools, pick one, mine's way overcrowded up there. Would we say that we're at 95% also of the fish report or greater than, or what?
All high
Help me.
schools, at all high schools, we do 95%.
You do, okay,
Yes.
okay, just asking,
I saw
Bridge is what, 110?
yeah.
Mr. Wilson, then Mr. Townsend.
Well, again, and I'm aware of the meeting that you had, but I would offer that, I mean, I think what they're arguing is that you're making those evaluations based on looking at blueprints and so forth, and they're saying, please come out and see us and walk through it with us, because even though it may appear that we have the facilities that we need, if you walk through here, it's clear that we don't. So I think that would be their argument.
And I think what she said, they did
did.
meet,
They did.
they did meet
We
and walk.
met at the
They met
school.
with
We
them
did.
at
Met
the
at the
school.
school.
They
You
walked the campus.
Yes,
But if,
You did walk the campus with
right,
us?
but not, I mean, we did walk the campus, we did not go in every classroom, but the campus was well utilized. The space, so that it wasn't like they were overcrowded.
No.
We did meet up there, the whole group, and we did walk the campus.
Mr. Townsend?
Just two things. One, in terms of kids transferring from high schools to play sports in ways that are shady, we should probably not talk too much about that.
Right.
I want to throw. I mean, I know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of that
There's a lot
that's
of
unfortunate. Second part, I think we potentially could use the expanded cohort at Lake Wales High to get them to zone themselves. And as I've discussed, if we, and as DOE has sort of half signed on to, I think that's a potential bait. You know, again, my problem with expanding them now, and even keeping them at what they are, is that they're not a school of last resort. We need them to be a school of last resort there, and they're not. We need to have a school of last resort in Lake Wales, because we don't have one right now, which is one of the appeals of. I don't have to go into all this. Y'all know where I am on this. Potentially, there's some leverage for us for something that they want, and then potentially for something that we want. I just want to throw that out there, but we don't have to discuss it further today.
Ms. Miller?
We just have input on the facilities, not going into the classrooms and stuff. I mean, charter in itself is supposed to be, they're not apples to apples to what we're doing in high schools. It's a different model. So they are doing things differently than we do. So their perception of what they can house is going to be very different than ours. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody, but that's what I'm assuming. The way they co-teach, the way they do a lot of the daily activities in that high school does not match what we do in ours. And so their need may look very different compared to some of our high schools. I don't know that we could walk their facility and tell them, this is how you should stuff 30 kids into a classroom. It's not how they set things up. Now, whether that's right or wrong or fair, or apples to apples, it's just it's very different. So I don't know that our needs match theirs.
Ms. Fortney?
Well, we got 3 high schools crammed in down here, so I don't know if we're comparing apples to apples or orange to oranges, but Orto High, Summerlin, and IB.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's a charter high school.
Bringing that up though.
Any other questions?
So you're gonna bring back recommendations then, to increase or not increase, and what the values are, or where are we on this? Not really sure.
I think what I did hear is that the question was, ask them about the wait list and the 83 students on the wait list and why have they not filled that.
Okay.
Get the breakdown of their 9 through 12
Okay,
on that.
and then for Discovery, the 850, or what?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes.
All right,
Stick to
inside,
the
okay,
contract.
okay.
And Candy, the roll-up from 8th grade tonight.
So their roll-up will be from,
Lake Wales.
well, Lake Wales, it would be off, which is the charter. So
Well,
She's going to sit at 8th grade roll up to that.
I'll just get their 8th grade.
Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Reynolds?
For the Lake Wales, I know we talked about the 83, but if we could also get I have a feeling the answer to that is going to be what you read to us. If we could also get why are we at 1567 if they're saying they can take 1600, where are those 33 students and why have they not filled those seats as well? That would be helpful.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing you have coming before you is, it's a lease purchase proposal, and that's coming with Mr. Davis and Mr. Perron.
Can I say something before this?
Yes.
Can we take this off the agenda tonight? Because I'm not going to vote for this tonight. I mean, I think this is probably something we have to do. I'm probably, but it's a big deal. I mean, like, this is a pretty major deal that maybe this was discussed at some point that I
It's
missed.
not on tonight, it's on next month.
Isn't it? I thought it was.
No.
I thought they said it was coming back.
It's on tonight, right?
Which one?
What we previously.
No, Motorola.
The charters? No.
The Motorola deal. The
Motorola.
Oh, sorry, I thought
yes.
we were still talking about
No, this
charters.
one's on.
It is on tonight, yep.
And the reason that it's back to back is due to the time frame in which, if this was approved, the building of the radios and the installing of them during the period of time that we have for the start of next school year. And pushing it to the May 14th was the concern, because we discussed that to see if we could go to the May 14th and have it voted on at that point. But the problem is that we're under a time constraint that we may not make it for the start of the following school year.
So, Mr. Townsend, we can have a discussion after they do the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're looking to upgrade our current radio system, which is a VHF radio system. That system is an analog system. We have no way, I'll just tell you the difference between the system that we have and what we're looking for. One, it enhances the safety of the 50,000 students that we transport to and from school each day. We will be a part of the Polk County Regional Public Safety Radio System. We also do about 6,000 field trips a year, and a large portion of those are after regular business hours. So this radio system, if approved, will allow us to have communication not only in Polk County, but also in Orange County, Lake County, and the surrounding areas where we do a lot of our field trips after hours, where they could get emergency help if needed. So the VHF system serves most of the county, but there are some dead spots where we'll lose communication with a school bus for 10 to 15 minutes due to the remote areas of the county, where the 800 megahertz system will cover the entire county. There are service limited. The service is limited to the range of the repeater systems that we had us put across the county, and so and the 800 megahertz radio system, you can talk countywide from any compatible radio that they have. Several years ago, we purchased an emergency radio for every school in the district. That is a similar radio, except this will be a mobile radio that's hard installed in school buses. So this will be the same capability that if there was an emergency, they could hit an orange button and have direct communication to the 911 system. Like I said, the VHF is analog, 800 megahertz is a digital system. The VHF is not GPS capable, the 800 megahertz is. We cannot identify a bus that's transmitting. So if a person's calling in, we can't identify what bus, where that bus is located. The 800 megahertz system, we can identify that bus as soon as they key the mic, we can identify that bus and the location. The VHF has no recording capabilities. The 800 megahertz has recording of all transmissions. It also gives the date and stamp of the time of that transmission. There is no remote radio control with the VHF, where the 800 you do have remote control from a desk sitting here in Bartow. You have remote control to that radio that's in the field miles away. The VHF has interference in poor weather. The 800 megahertz is not as susceptible to that. The VHF has no analytical data. The 800 has very in-depth analytical data for the radio usage. And then other counties and districts with the interoperability that we can work with is Lake County, Sumter County, Orange County, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, and Osceola County. And so those are the reasons that, the main reason is safety. And we don't have that level of safety with the radio system that we have right now. And so we felt that we felt like we needed that in a school several years back, and we spent the money to do that. And because there are 510 school buses on the road every day, and then the support fleet and the sub or our secondary fleet, it's a large price tag to this. I understand that, and we have looked at this from 2006, on, to see, if this is something that we could fit into the budget, and it's just never been able to come to happen. So this lease to purchase, is a municipal lease to purchase, and I think Mr. Brown can talk more about the terms and agreements for that, was a way to do that at this point in time.
One of the things I would like to add to that, we're talking about safety and hardening of our schools, and at some point we do have to address what happens on our buses. That is a mobile classroom every day going down the highways for our children. So looking at how to address that, not depending on our drivers and assistants to utilize a cell phone, as you hear there are dead spots, but making sure that these systems are in contact with any emergency operation that we have. And I know we've been talking to Board of County Commissions about it. We've talked to the Sheriff's Office about it, make sure that these will actually, if dispatched, it goes directly to them and they can respond in a timely manner versus someone calling on a cell phone or radioing in. So this is why we want to bring this to you. We notice that safety is important to us in our school buildings, but our buses also represents an area where we have to make sure our children are safe on it day in and day out as well. Mr. Wilson, I saw your hand recognized.
Mr. Prone, in the safety issue, I get that completely. I guess I'm just having a hard time following the numbers. So what are the total upfront costs? I know we're spreading those over a period of time, but we have some upfront costs, then we have some recurring costs that occur, it looks like.
So the recurring cost is for the maintenance of the radio system. So there's a 7-year plan that's in that total figure.
And what are the recurring costs per year?
So over the 7 years, it'd be $478,000. But this is, if we didn't use that, if we didn't use their service plan, then we would be paying a user fee, a monthly user fee to the Board of County Commissioners.
Right, so we have recurring costs, and then we have some recurring costs we're going to eliminate, and that's where I'm going with it. So what is the net recurring cost over that period of time?
So if we went with the Board of County Commissioners and we paid $20 a unit per month times 12 months, you're looking at $1.1 million. That'd be a $680,000 savings if we go with the reoccurring costs yearly through the Motorola plan that we have before you.
$680,000. Say it again, please. I'm sorry, I lost it.
$680,000 over the 7-year period.
That we actually save, net savings.
Right.
Okay.
If we go with the maintenance plan with Motorola.
And then what are the upfront costs then?
So there's no upfront costs at this point in time. It would be, there's actually a deferred for 1 year before we make the first payment.
Well, I mean, I say upfront, I mean there's some costs in addition, there's some non-recurring costs. Is that just the $6 million?
That's the, minus that $478,000 that we would pay reoccurring throughout that 7 years, and I think it totals up to the, one of the tabs.
I'm still not following.
3.5 million.
Get to that section.
And maybe it looks like, and I could be wrong, it looks like we have some non-recurring costs we're going to pay for it, and then it looks like we have a recurring savings. Is that correct?
The way I read this, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're paying 1.3 million next year. There'd be a total of like 6. I guess that's to get all the equipment, to buy all, and then there's kind of a recurring operation fee. Is that correct? Over time,
yes.
The recurring operation fee will be less than our recurring operation fee now on our bad system. Is that like what it costs to operate it on an ongoing basis, right?
Yes, sir, and it would also be a savings through the Board of County Commissioners, because we would be solely depending on them to service those radios, and that would be a $20 user fee, up to a $20 user fee every month per radio system.
Right.
We pay those right now with the radios that we have in the schools.
But I think Chairman Wilson's question, I think he sees the $6 million as the upfront cost. I think that's what you're saying, right? Like that's what you're referring to?
Yeah, I said up front, really what I meant was non-recurring and recurring. So it looks like the $6 million is non-recurring, is that correct? And that's, we're gonna pay for that. And then we have a recurring savings of how much per
Right.
year?
So, I didn't break it out.
600,000?
Yeah, on
Okay.
600.
I think that's, is that the total for the 7 years?
For the
Yeah, it's for the
7
7.
years.
600,000.
So it's
7
really a minimal
Right,
overall cost over a period of, say, 10 years.
or 7. Like the
Over the
equipment.
7
Right,
years.
7.
Ms. Cunningham?
Okay, couple of things. Number one, safety is of the utmost importance. We have a parent in the room who probably everybody recognizes, lost her child on our bus. It's very personal to me that we have this communication system for these kids. Because bottom line is, her daughter would still be here if we had a system like this. I can't say for sure, but I feel we're way behind in doing this. It is like a classroom, yes, Miss Bird, it's very much like a classroom. And things happen on those buses, we all know it. Go through discipline cases, we go through all kinds of things, videos, whatever. To me, the most important thing, and particularly in my area, out in the middle of nowhere, you can't get service on a cell phone or other things because you're so damn remote. This would allow us the opportunity to be able to have our bus drivers in contact with emergencies immediately. So I am very much, I know it's last minute, I reviewed it and it's expensive, but to me, I don't see that there's an option. I trust you as the financial guru of the county, of our Polk County School District, to figure out the financing and what's the best way to do this. I'm sorry, baby. But it just had to be said. So I feel like we need to move forward. However you do the financials, I trust you. The other thing is, for us, as a part of this Polk County community, to be able to interact with the Board of County Commissioners, with the Sheriff's Department, with Fire Department, whoever puts us light years ahead to where we are today. And I know it takes time. I hate that it's coming today and we're wanting to vote in a couple of hours. You know, but we've been asking for some time now to do something to prevent what has already happened. And I just feel like it's a lot of money, I get it, but you save one life, to me it's worth $6 million and the recurring costs and whatever we move forward. Because you just don't know who the next person on a bus is gonna be that's gonna have an emergency situation. We know how our world is today, and there's more and more things that are happening to kids and issues. And I know I would feel better knowing that we have that ability. You know, we've all got examples. I have examples of my own kid being on a bus, okay? We all have them. It would be great to have that, to be able to communicate expeditiously should there be an issue. So I, for one, support it, to save lives, to be in contact and communication as quick as possible, and to tie in with the other Polk County Fire, Emergency, Sheriff, Board of County Commissioners, however, so that we're all tied to the same system. And the 7 years I get, being an engineer, you know, technology's only good for so long, and maybe in 7 years we have to upgrade or change. I don't know, we'll deal with that in 7 years, but I think that's a smart move. You can't have a 10 or 15-year life on radio equipment today. I'm sorry, by the time we install this, there'll be something new coming aboard, but at least I feel like we'd be making progress. So I'll be supporting this tonight.
Ms. Flanagan?
Well, I read all 6 of your documents. I was thrilled as a science teacher. That's a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, it is.
And so my biggest question was, is there any kind of maybe unknown costs like installation of all those receptor things and you know what I'm talking about?
We have a representative from Motorola here, and
And this would include our schools as well, right? Each school would have a,
they already have that.
they already, oh, it's already on the megahertz.
Right. It's already on the megahertz.
So we would tie our schools in. And then what are the chances of Hardy and Highlands County being in that? Because we have a lot of sports teams that travel down that way and
they have the interoperability to,
you know, we play Hardy High School, a lot of our schools do. I know we go to Avon Park, Sebring, Lake Placid. That was a concern I had about, I know we can't make them do anything, but, and this is like totally EMS for hurricane shelters too, right?
Yes.
Like, could we
If we
transfer
had it
those
back-
radios to our
and if we had
dual duty, is what I'm saying?
If we had to evacuate a nursing home, which we've done in the past under severe weather conditions, we would have direct communication with the sheriff's department. When we did it before, we didn't have that. It was an escort. This would, you could communicate
Real
directly
time.
with that deputy that was in front of you.
I guess my question is more simple. Like, so if we can get the radio off the bus and take it to the high school that's the shelter? Or can we park the bus where
We have the radio.
capability?
Right, yeah. We could park the bus there, but we have the handheld capabilities to
Move them around and use
yeah.
them as we need them. That's
Yeah.
pretty much my question. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Wilson?
And to be clear, I fully supported this as well. I guess, I don't know what else is out there, and there may not be anything else out there, but it would, I want to make sure I have a grasp on the numbers, because what if somebody comes before us and says, hey, we've got a better product, something that works better, faster, we could install it for you better at half of what you paid. So we have responsibility to ask those questions. And I get, so what it looks like to me, so here's my question. After the 7 years, is it possible we will still enjoy some savings from the Board of County Commissioners or no? Because if so, I mean, we're talking about a very negligible cost here, based on what you've told me and the numbers I've crunched.
So I'm Chaz Elliott, I'm the local Motorola manufacturer's representative. I'm actually based out of Sebring, so I can definitely talk to the Highlands RD and all that network. I think the key point is to what you're talking about, an upfront cost, yes, is $5.995 million. So when you look at that, but there is a realized savings as you guys are discussing here, and the realization on the savings is as part of that $5.995 million, and this is part of the reason why the science teacher in you enjoys that looking at that proposal. We are expanding the county's network. So, in order for you guys to come on, basically there has to be, some rooms, some channels that are available for you to come on, because there will be loading from all of, putting 700 buses on the county system, basically. So with that, when you're expanding the county system, there has to be some form of recurring cost to maintain that equipment. So the county has basically come down and, through working with Mr. Davis and everybody, the county has said, hey, look, instead of charging you a user fee for every radio you bring on the system, if you were going to be expanding the county system, well, then you're already basically paying for your equipment to be on that system. Why should we charge you a user fee? So they've basically said, we'll abolish the user fees to you guys if you're expanding the county system, because they also get some realization of benefit as well. Should there be an emergency or whatever, your channels are trunked together, and without getting too technical and everything else, basically, you would share those resources. So while on a day-to-day, if you look at bus traffic and stuff like that, certainly very early in the morning, you're very busy for a couple-hour window, and then, early afternoon, you're very busy for a couple-hour window. But for the most part, at 3 a.m., there's probably not a lot of bus traffic. So, they would get that realization of benefit from the sheriff's office or fire rescue or anything else because of the additional resources on the system. So that's where the sharing of cost has come in there, is when they abolish those user fees to you guys for expanding the system, there will be a realization, over the course of, however many years you use the radio system. It's also, I think, important to say that as part of the service, the maintenance agreement, the county has a software upgrade agreement in place. So part of your maintenance dollars every year that will be going to Motorola will be towards the software upgrade agreement. So at the end of 7 years, the county's not starting over from scratch, needing to buy a new radio system. Now everything's IP based. There are routers, switches, made by HP, Dell, Cisco, all these, common vendors. As those items start to go out of support, we are replacing the hardware on those commonly stocked items and then also doing software upgrades. So at the end of 7 years, the goal is basically for the infrastructure, maybe not to be brand new, but be pretty dang close and not have any out of support components, because the last thing we want to be having a conversation with the county is at the end of 7 years is, hey, by the way, here's a big number you've got to buy to. So it's a way to get recurring costs over time to build that system and continue to keep it current.
So we're enjoying some significant economies of scale here.
Yes, and I think that answers your question about, somebody else comes to you and says, hey, we can do this way cheaper, and so on and so forth. You're expanding the county's system that they've already, you're leveraging what they've already expended, basically. Yeah, their investment. So the current system has a master site that controls the radio system that's based here in Bartow. Polk County purchased it. Hardy County obviously has, economic concerns and so on and so forth. They, in mind of their own, they said, hey, why don't we tie into Polk County? And there was an agreement made between the BOCCs and so on and so forth. They tied in, Highlands has tied in, and we're cutting DeSoto over next week. They will be tied in. So you will have a 4-county system where you can take a bus, in the north side of Polk County and talk to a bus in the south side of DeSoto County, which is a nice, regional benefit there. Whereas, a lot of counties, you go to a lot of these counties, they build their own individual radio system.
Plus the other ones that he mentioned, right? Lake, Osceola, Orange, Hillsborough.
Exactly.
Correct. So you'll have coverage from your system, and you'll be able to seamlessly roam. To go over to a lake or Osceola or however, you'll have to change a channel to do that. But we have that ability to do it by being on the 800 megahertz platform.
I think it's really cool. Citrus Connection, are they hooked into that, or?
They are on the 800 megahertz.
Okay.
Mr. Townsend?
So the button you mentioned, the orange button or the red button, is that what this woman's been, her husband has been talking about?
Yes.
For simply the ability to push a button and there's an emergency call that can
And
do
it will identify where the location is and send all the resources they have.
I mean, I feel like a guy who's been begging for a drink of water for like 9 months and just had a cooler dumped on me. I'm fine with the sole source part of this. I usually not, but I know enough about the way the system works and the integration of it that it's fine. Why on earth would you not have told us you were doing this? Like, I mean, considering if you had told me we're going to integrate into the county's 800 megahertz, I mean, you got a 63-page proposal from Motorola here. Why didn't you tell us you had that? And then we could have gone, hey, look at what we're doing, guys. We're taking this really seriously. Instead, we just take abuse for you. I mean, it's mystifying to me sometimes. My concern with this is implementation. I see we're going to have a project manager. They're going to have a project manager. Who are those people? Who's our project manager for
So
it?
we have trained radio technicians. Charles will be our main project manager, will receive training from Motorola. He's dealt with radio systems his entire career. He will be the project manager. We also have Don Stevenson, who's over the fleet, and he will also be a part of that. And then any other resources that we can help provide when needed.
Is implementation built into the cost of this? I mean, like it's part of the.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that answers part of the question about the timing and why now versus May, 15th or whatever is from a standpoint, when we talked about it, we tried to work with you guys on it, but from an implementation standpoint, we can't have half the buses on one system and half the buses on the other system come August 12th, the first day of school. So we have to install 700 radios and buses And we have to, the county has a 12-site system, we have to expand that 12-site system, both with electrical, circuits and everything, and get the new channels of the infrastructure up on the air simultaneously in parallel with all of the stuff that we have to implement for all the buses. So that's, from a timing perspective, that's why we were.
And how, I'm sorry, can I ask one more?
Sure.
How confident are you with the timelines we get? I mean, is this a typical timeline to get a project of this structure done?
I would say it's an accelerated timeline, but we've committed to it. We already have people stood up. Actually, I talked to Charles this morning to try and say, hey, assuming we get board action tonight, how quickly can we meet? Can we start to go over with the installers? Here's who the point contacts are going to be. And we've tried to get the ball rolling there. I think we're doing it in Broward County with actually this summer with 1,400 or 1,500 buses. So.
And Mr. Townsend, I understand your concern, and we're not trying to dump this on in any of the board members' lap. We've been looking at the system for a while now, and we talked about the funding sources, and so we didn't know what the funding sources may be, so we didn't know if this project would be kicked off or not.
Can I just answer that? When I say you, I'm not talking you, Rob. I'm talking about you, the wider you here. It's all we had to do was say, we had a terrible thing happen on our buses. We want to prevent that thing from happening again. One option for that is for us to integrate into the 800 megahertz system. We can actually pay for that through sales tax money. Would you guys like us to explore that? Yes, I'd have thrown my computer up in the air. Like, help me help you is what I don't know how many times I have to say this. This is a massive response to a big question, to a big problem that's been in front of us for months. And we did nothing to tell the public about it. You had a proposal there. I mean, when did we ask for the proposal from Motorola? Can I ask that?
We've asked for several over the years. I think
the most recent one.
The recent March 5th.
Okay, well that's sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but
and it's outlined, Mr. Townsend, in the description, but so that you could basically see the main highlight was that we are connecting to the BOCC. That's why we lifted that out of all the pages in there, so that it is connected directly into the emergency system.
No, I'm with you on the system. I'm sold. I'm just talking about stakeholder management for the future, guys. This doesn't have to be this hard. I'm sorry.
Mr. Wilson?
So, Ms. Cunningham is absolutely correct. You can't place a price on the safety of our students, and we need to move forward with it. But what I'm thinking here is I'm running this through my head. Depending on the technology, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know, and I'm going to ask a question of you in just a moment. But depending on the technology, and given the economies of scale and the partnerships we have, if this lasts 10 or 15 years, it might cost nothing.
Exactly.
Relative to what we're currently doing. That's a selling point, no matter how you look at it. So we need to be thinking in those terms, I think. So my question is, this doesn't look like a new technology. This looks like an old technology. And if that's the case, then we could fully expect this to last another 10 or 15 years. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's hard to gauge that because one of the internal Motorola jokes is always the hardest part is selling against ourselves. You look at some radios, the county actually is working on a project towards the end of this year where they're going to upgrade the county's radios, their end user equipment, basically. Some of those, the sheriff's office radios and such, and so on and so forth. I mean, some of them have been around the better part of 15 years. And they're just replacing batteries and antennas and refurbishing them, and here they go. So yeah, it is not uncommon in our world to see, we certainly typically don't commit to that because we don't know where technology is going to go, as you talked about earlier. But it's not uncommon to see a 10, 15, sometimes longer year life cycle.
We're using an old technology that works. Why would you, why would you change that if it's working? And I want to go back to this just for a moment. I appreciate the fact that there was a lot of work that went into this to build the partnership. I get that. So I understand that's why we're just now hearing about it, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening to make this work. But I also think it's pretty exciting. We might have, we might have mentioned that. I think folks would have liked to have known.
Okay, Ms. Miller?
I have two, the implementation with training of staff, which that's gonna include aides on the bus as well as drivers. Because that would be my concern, the implementation of who's operating the equipment and they all know how it works. And I concur that I would have liked this, you know, we've had this family sit in front of us for months. I would have liked to tell the community this was our, you know, this is our intent, this is what's available, this is what we're working towards. I appreciate the work that's gone in this short amount of time, but a response, instead of zero, instead of the iron gates that they hear nothing, the community hears nothing from us, it would be nice to give them the response earlier that this is an effective solution that we're gonna implement.
Or even the possibility of never studying it.
Yeah, just the study, right, because you never know.
Mr. Rogers?
Rob, I was just curious, what happens when you have a regular bus down for maintenance, one that has a hard mount, that it's down for maintenance or repair, and you have to call up a bus from the, I don't know what you, in the Air Force we call it the boneyard, I don't know what you call it, but you call up a bus that was formerly in service or whatever that you have set aside as a spare, what happens?
Those will be equipped with the same radios, because we use those spare buses about 60% of the time.
Sure.
Due to the inspection cycle, the rigid inspection cycle that we have to inspect every school bus every 27, we do a 27-day cycle. The state says it has to be 30 days, but we give ourselves a few windows, so a few days.
So every bus we have in use transporting students will be hard mounted?
Correct. So when they sell, they would be uninstalled and reinstalled in new buses that
Gotcha.
would be purchased.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Courtney?
Ruth, that's so tiny I can't even see it. How and when will the training for our bus drivers and attendants roll out? And will it go with our CPR training and all of that?
And we're discussing the logistics. We have 2 days in the summer that we have the bus drivers and bus attendants for 8 hours each day. And so the first day is everyone together. The second day is breakout. So the breakout, we usually do the CPR, hands-free. That's what we did last year. And then the second portion of that day would have to be the training on how to use the Motorola equipment. And if we have to do a third day, we can work that into the schedule. We still have time to do that.
And coming from the teaching work, do our bus drivers get paid to attend that?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. I was just checking.
Mr. Townsend?
On the brain system, is this, it said it's in Bartow. How does that differ from the emergency management system at the sheriff's office where all the big screens are? Are those systems talking, are they, how does that work?
So everything is connected via what we call microwave, which is like point-to-point wireless signals, basically. But it's public safety grade version of that. So that's the connectivity medium that connects, let's say, the emergency communications center into the radio system. So when they're sitting at a software-driven computer, basically they can control, they can see the ID of the bus or whatever, the GPS location, all of that, because they're tied into the radio system network. So we're actually, in this proposal, we're including 2 positions at your transportation dispatch that with that same microwave connectivity into Bartow, the Bartow master site, so that you will have the same exact control whether you picked up a dispatcher from the Bartow, from your transportation dispatch center and went to the emergency communications center. You could sit down at the same computer and it would operate. We can load it so that it operates exactly the same way.
All right, let me clarify what I'm asking. Is at the sheriff's office center, which is not in Bartow, it's Winter Haven-ish. EOC, right? Is that's based on the 800 megahertz system, right? That's in there. So somebody sitting there will be able to pick up a bus pinging to it. That's what I'm talking about. And the Bartow Center is what? How does that? What is the
EOC too?
Is there?
Yeah, what I'm referring to is just the physical tower site. At the tower site, there's a shelter there with a master site, which is the brains that controls the whole radio system.
It's like an automated thing, just that stuff's
exactly.
Okay. The human beings who are interacting with the information are based at the sheriff's office. Right. Okay.
And I believe all of them have backup generators if the power
Oh,
goes
yeah.
down. The infrastructure that the county has built that we will be using, it's state of the art. I mean, they've got backup generators, they have everything that we need to operate in any situation.
And the sheriff is happy to hear that we're doing this and is on board. Did we-
The major was in the meeting, was it last week? On the review, 2 weeks ago, with the major.
They raised any concerns, any integration concerns?
They just wanted to make sure that it was compatible and everything, and that's why the major was there. So. He would've called me if not.
I would assume so, yeah. Which is one reason why I'm thinking about giving him a week.
Giving him a week?
If we could
Oh.
give somebody a week to react to this, I mean.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be-
Okay, oh, it's coming.
I just want to say thank you. Y'all have done an amazing job putting this together, and I think the key thing is to be able to tie in with the Emergency Operations Center and be a part of that entire network that's been built, and to work with others in the safety arena. I think it's awesome. So kudos to all of you for what you've done. I think this is going to take us a long way in the future for safety for our kids, for God knows what may happen on a bus or on a site or whatever. So thank you. A lot of work, and Motorola, thank you for coming through to give us some savings or whatever the word is, because we're adding to the infrastructure, but we're not out there on a limb ourselves building a brand new system. We're tying into an existing one. So I think it's just great.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
And I have to say that our general counsel came through for us this, I mean, with flying colors on this as well, so.
Yay.
Well, it's been fast and furious.
Yay. But we have to do that to be ready for August, and I
We do.
get it. So
Mr.
it's
Townsend?
rigorous.
Just one point, like, as I understand this is being made possible because of the sales tax vote. I mean, no?
No, it's a possibility. We'll update the board when we determine what the final funding source and the type. If you see, the agenda item said local capital or sales tax. So we're looking into what's the best way to pay for it, and we'll let you know.
But if it was only local capital, we'd be significant. I mean, the public gave us options to do this to some degree.
You mean out of the sales tax? That
Right.
has to be determined. We believe it does. They just need to go back to the
Okay.
sales tax committee. If not, we'll pay for it out of our local. And that's when I would say we kick in the lease, because then you are paying for it over 5 years and not really hitting that fund too hard in 1 year.
Mr. Wilson?
I think, and I don't want to put words into Mr. Townsend's mouth, I think what he's
Please do.
saying, I think what he's saying is because the public
sales tax.
voted for the sales tax, this is a viable option for us. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So thank you to the
Thank you, public, for taking care of your own children.
Children.
Yes, it's important.
Right.
And I also want to echo Ms. Cunningham's comments, say thank you as well. And thank you for being here, because those explanations were very helpful.
Ms. Fortney, you have a question?
What was your name again? Zach?
Chaz, C-H-A-S.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to do the last one quickly,
Oh,
or
go ahead.
there's one more on this one? Which is just a revised job description. Ms. Porteous will share the revision on that. Then we'll go on the break.
Madam Superintendent, as I understand, this is on the agenda for this evening as well, right?
Yes,
Okay.
she'll let you know
Okay.
why we have it on back to back on this one.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
Afternoon.
Before you is a revised job description. Essentially, I'd like to move this from a senior director to a director of equity and diversity management. As the item description says, I looked at other districts, and I really just want to bring it in line with that. With the current incumbent retiring, I thought it was a perfect time to do it. We're asking that it goes back to back so I can provide some training as well and make sure that the new person coming in, and I've not identified a person, but making sure that that new person coming in has the adequate time with the retiring person to adequately train and be ready for school starting in August.
Any questions, Ms. Miller?
Do we often do this when people are retiring to see where we can save or where? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
I just want to make sure that, I'm supportive of this, I understand why you're doing it. I want to make sure that people don't see this as a reduction of our commitment to these issues.
Oh, not at all.
And so I want to make sure that is communicated.
So one of the things that I've kind of talked to Mrs. Bird about is looking at overall what our structure is and making sure that we have enough people to staff that department. So bringing it down to a director will help me overall, just in case on the back end I may want to add another investigator in that department.
But I will add that as far as those duties and everything, that's still aligned.
Correct. The duties
We
are.
didn't downgrade all that.
That kind of goes to that question that they're going to be the same, because I know Mr. Joe did his reach was very broad, and that will still be what, this new position? Okay.
That is correct.
That's good.
Do we have any candidates?
I'm not advertised for it yet,
We're gonna advertise after it's voted on. We'll advertise it.
Gotcha.
so you'll see it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Back
Do we-
to-
Do we want to talk about the informational items very quickly? Or?
Okay, sure. If you want.
I know everybody's ready for a break.
I told him. Okay, so quickly, there are information items if there, since the chair wants to move that direction.
Well, I just had a comment about,
Yes.
about financial statements. It looks like we're going to be a little bit better with the fund balance than what we had originally anticipated, and I just wanted to mention that because I think that's important.
Should we override the chair?
I was trying.
The projected, you mean?
Yeah, the projected. Because it looks like we had budgeted, let me get there, it looks like we had budgeted 3 something, and we may end up at 4. We
Yeah,
budgeted
that's the
3.1.
normal- That's the normal flow of the lapse.
That's a normal lapse.
We didn't budget it like we did 2 or 3 years ago, so we start out with a lower budget figure.
Oh, that's right, you're right. You're right, my mistake, thank you. Okay.
Any
Because
other-
we thought originally 4.5, and we're now at 4.05. Right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
I think I'm just going to kind of pivot to the custodial survey. I just glad to see this. I know this is something we'd asked about. I mean, this goes back to the concerns, but the Airmark contract, I think, and I just want to make sure we have a plan. I would love to have an update on at some point in the fairly near future about how we're going to address some of these things.
We will.
I second that, because I read all that. And
Okay.
especially
We will
the
keep it
budget.
updated. Thank you, that concludes
Okay.
my section. We'll take a 15-minute break. How long are we?
10 minutes.
Okay, he says 10 minutes.
We'll get 10 from that chair.
Like to get started, please? Next item on the agenda is review of this evening's school board meeting. So we have some special recognitions, Madam Superintendent, and I think Ms. Miller's going to go down front and present those. Okay. We have one set of minutes. We're continuing to work on the minutes. We'll have those available at the next meeting. We have some new administrators, Madam Superintendent?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Item C, 14 through C, 17. Questions, concerns?
Here we go.
I'm trying to think where we are. Where are we?
We're on the regular agenda, tonight's agenda.
But you're at
Items
you're through C17, is that what you're asking?
C, yeah, C14 through C17. Actually, if there's anything you want to talk about, you want to go backwards, we can certainly do that.
Well, I just learned today that you can't, this is why I've been lost a little bit, I'm gonna put it out there, because you have to go back to the main. Joanne, can you explain that to me again?
What's attached on the work session is a screenshot of your board agenda. If you're going to open up something, you're dealing with
So,
Yeah, you
but
should
I
go
had,
to the actual agenda.
right, so I've had hard copies until this time, so it really didn't bother me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you have any,
I don't know yet.
Any-
'cause I
okay, you're
never
still
think you
looking?
did it.
all right?
Okay.
So we'll come back. If you see something you want to come back to,
That's
we'll come
great.
back. So the next item are cash donations, C18 through C42, and as always, we're very grateful to our community and our partners for
I had a
supporting
question
our-
about one of those,
Yes.
unless it got changed. There was a donation from the NFL Foundation, but it's listed twice, so I don't, is it 2 to Lakeland and 1 to Auburndale? Because Was it 2 separate donations for 10,000?
Yes.
Okay. So they do that multiple times, and we have to list it separately.
Okay. And then we have some non-cash donations, I see items C43, C44, C45. Any questions, comments? Business services, facilities, C46 to C53. Questions, comments?
The pre-qualified vendor list that we have, is that something that's updated throughout the year? Oh, Ms. Usher's not here.
She's here.
Yes, it is.
Oh, you're
Yes,
here.
it is.
She's here.
It is updated.
Okay, so it's more than once a year that you go through vendors.
Right. Whenever
Okay.
we get new vendors, we add them and bring them back to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so,
Oh.
yes, ma'am.
C46,
C46.
that had, I thought we were on hold for, are we just extending the adoptions on the map? I thought we were on hold for, the core,
We're talking about C46,
School book
the
depository.
instructional material.
yes, sir,
No,
has nothing to do with it?
it does have some to do with it, but we still have to go ahead and purchase materials for instructional materials for our teachers. So we worked it toward that. We're able to meet the adopted versus the non-adopted. If you want me to get more specific, I'll be glad to.
No, I just wanted a little clarification, Dr. Akes, I'm good.
Yeah. No, we still are having to make the.
Pardon me?
Speak, let's speak. Yes.
I was trying to listen.
Thank you. With, for the mathematics material that's on this adoption, these are mostly some of our upper level courses who are off of the last adoption 5 years, so their materials are at least probably close to 9 years old. So it's courses like probability and statistics honors, calculus honors, things that the new standards really will not affect, and we do need to get something in our classroom for saying for graduation and looking out for the future of the kids. So we're allowed to purchase material that are non-adopted, so this is that component of it.
So it comes out of a different pot of money?
It's the same pot of money, it's different instructional materials, but the state says we can use up to 50% on non-adopted state material.
Ms. Fortin, I
Mr.
think you were
Townsend.
asking about the math adoption that was up and that was put on hold because
Right.
everything, that's when I think that's where you were talking about, but this is separate from that.
Gotcha.
That helps.
Mr. Counselor?
This is actually sort of unrelated, but related to you.
Sure.
That's right. At our last roundtable meeting, we discussed bringing in Paul Cottle, who's a physicist and real advocate for math education. He's agreed to come to the July 23rd meeting. He's sort of an expert on what kids are coming in prepared for and what they're not. And I would urge you to, I would urge the superintendent to urge you to come. Like, I think that'd be a really cool discussion. And I wanted to raise that territory.
No, that'd be great, I believe you mentioned that.
Right.
Jeff and I looked at that, so that was
And
very good work, I've been following his work, so.
And he's impressed that we managed to expand access to physics when a lot of other districts are moving in the other direction on that. I think he's actually bringing a guy from UCF as well. They have a lot to say about.
And that's one of the ideas of putting it for our upper level courses, to give that access to the upper level mathematics courses.
For the upper level science.
We did that last year with the science adoption.
Yes, sir.
Joe, will you speak just a minute to what you did with the math and the textbooks there? Because I think that was really what the question was in regards to. How did you handle ensuring that the math teachers had what they needed for the next few years until those standards are adopted? Talk about the process.
Right. When that came out on February 13th of suspending the mathematics adoption, we went right back to our teacher groups and really looked at, because as said, there is a pot of money that there's a percentage of that instructional material fund that can be used for non-adopted materials. So in some courses, we said, you know what, this is what's best for kids. We changed the adoption cycle to the contract for 3 years instead of 5 years. So there's some inner workings that we had to negotiate with. In other times, the teacher groups said, you know what we're doing right now, we're getting gains. Let's continue on that path. So we really brought the teachers back together to and hear what they had to say. And we worked on it together. So there'll be more in the next board meeting, but I wanted to get all the stuff through the Florida Textbook Depository done in one chunk, and all the rest will be coming in different sources, so.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, not for you.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
So we're currently on items C47 through C53. Any questions, comments about any of those items?
C47.
This is item number 47 through item number 53. Facilities and operations. Items C54 through C57. Questions, comments?
On the Westwood Middle School gymnasium, is that to construct a new one, or is there one there that
There
we're?
was not one.
I don't remember being when I was a student, but that was a long time ago.
It doesn't have
It's
one.
never
Okay,
had one.
it's
so
never
it's
had
to
one.
construct a new
Okay.
one. It is.
Yeah.
Denison and Westwood never had one.
Right.
And just to speak to that, every time I've gone, it's been raining and there's been 50 kids
And they tried to
inside for
cover
PE,
that, yeah.
which I don't know if you've seen 50 middle schoolers inside PE ever, but it is a lot there and desperate and need of somewhere.
Well, they've talked about it since the
So-
late 80s when I was there.
Okay, Mr. Townsend?
Real quick question, what's the standard for when something gets on the consent agenda versus the regular agenda? Like we approved those, the architecture or design stuff on the regular, got this one on consent. I'm sort of curious what the reasoning is. It doesn't have to be a great detail.
Generally, it's things that are they're considered to be routine, that go on the consent agenda. And certainly, anytime, Mr. Bridges can talk to this, anytime a board member would like to have something pulled, we've talked about this before and put on the regular agenda.
No, I know that. I'm just curious what the internal thinking is, but I'll ask later.
Yeah, typically, this is a conversation we have from time to time, and typically, if when the agenda is being constructed, it's anticipated that there might need to be discussion about something, it'll go on regular.
Okay.
And big stuff, I think the board a while back set a dollar threshold, said if it was over a certain amount, they'd like to have it on regular, but it's typically, there's no legal distinction in the merit of one over the other, so long as the board votes, but it's just the determination when they're putting the agenda together of whether or not it might require discussion.
That's a pretty nice $4.5 million gym for Westwood. I might just comment on it during the consent. I don't want to pull it off, but I'll just say something during consent.
Okay.
I want to
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
if you know off the top of your head, and if not, that's fine too. I know Denison does not have a gym. What other middle schools don't?
Angela has, she does
Mrs.
have it.
Fortney, yes, there are like 4 or 5 schools, and we have them all prioritized. And Westwood is the other, but as soon as we get more sales tax, if we're on the sales tax list,
Right.
we plan to have the mini gym at all the middle schools.
Okay, so,
Okay?
because UA
Denison
doesn't
is
have
next
a.
in line, it's Westwood, Denison, is there Lakeland?
Okay, excuse me, we need to have some order. It's going to be difficult for folks to take minutes, so I need one person speaking at a time, please. Ms. Escher?
Okay, yes, we have the gymnasium at Lakeland Highland Middle, Lake Gibson Middle, Denison Middle, Bartow Middle, McLaughlin Middle. Those are the gyms we have. So we're starting with Westwood, and the next will be Denison.
I'm glad we're starting with Westwood because I've been involved with the Inwood community. And I hope they have access to using that because they are really trying to get a community center put there through the Board of County Commission as well. So I think anything we can do for Westwood is a positive. How's that, Ms. Miller?
She doesn't say that she also worked at Westwood for just a second.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments, items? Where do we stop? C54 through C57. Any questions, comments, items E58, C58. Items, the regular agenda, items R59, R60, we have the naming of Auburndale High School. I'll ask Mr. Hill to come forward and say a few words about that, and he's agreed to do that.
Field, right?
The naming the field.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not naming the school.
We're renaming the field, excuse me, let me clarify.
Oh, my phone will start blowing
The
up.
football
Really.
field.
Yeah, we don't really want that, right?
And then Ms. Miller will make the motion. And there was some question about whether or not this required a second. I'm going to ask for a second just to make sure we're dotting all the i's and crossing the t's. We have items R61 through R63, nomination for sales tax. Who is that? That was
That's me, Katie Worthington Decker.
Katie Worthington Decker, and I'll ask Ms. Reynolds to say a few words and to make the motion on that.
Ms.
Yes,
Bird,
ma'am.
Can we go back to C58, number 3?
Mhm.
Do you see that? Is that what we were speaking about with the pool?
The robotics one.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm. Let me double check. I don't think that's the same.
Okay, because that would be DC area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you pull that one for me, please, Mr. Davis? Pull that one so I can take a look quickly. Thank you.
Okay, all right, items R62 and R63, questions, comments? Items R64 through R69.
I have one on R64. If Dr. Sankey could just speak to that INVO contract, adding a board certified behavior analyst and 4 registered techs with the funding amount of $1,123,200. Is that to expand what we're doing, or is that in addition to what we have
The
available?
original contract this year only had 16 of the registered behavior techs, and we need to add some more personnel to help in that area, but we had not expended all of the funds for that contract because of some positions not being filled at the beginning of the year. So yes, it's to expand on what we're already doing, but it didn't cost us any more money for this current school year.
Because this is a contract to use their services.
Their services, right.
And do we ever bid those contracts out? I know that is a large company that probably has more providers than we have locally for other companies.
Yes, we have not bid those out. They were already in place when I got here. I think the other reason is because, one, they have the capacity to be able to expand and continue to add the same support. When we start adding different companies and they have to overlap, it starts to cause a little bit of angst with different providers.
Because they have to oversee their RBTs.
Yes.
Okay. I also have a question. I don't know that you received this. I sent this to Joanne the day of the work session when you had that presentation and gave us all of that great information. There were several requests made, like a breakdown of the contract services with IDA and the breakdown of travel costs. There were several questions asked, and I haven't had a response.
So I sent that, I think yesterday, or
I got it this morning.
okay, yeah, I sent it yesterday afternoon, so it just hasn't reached you guys yet.
Okay.
We were trying to gather everybody, all the board members' requests for that, because there was various pieces, so we just sent it all at once.
So we should get that today
You should
or
get that
tomorrow?
Whenever Ms. Clanton sends it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Items R64 through items R69. I'm a little confused about item R67. It appears that there could be 2 separate motions there, or maybe one run-on motion, I'm not sure. It looks like there's a motion to approve the $50,000 pre-construction services fee for Wharton Smith for the new high school. But also it looks like we're recommending authorizing the superintendent and her facilities to approve upon review of that contract a guaranteed maximum price proposal for the project, and then for facility staff to bring the guaranteed maximum price to the board at a later date. One motion. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
It is for the 50,000 because they need to start getting their documents together right now.
Okay.
So we'll work with them to come up with the GMP, and once we come out to an agreement based on all the standards we have to review that, we will bring that back as a superintendent staff to the board for approval.
Okay. And we're authorizing guaranteed maximum price proposal for the project. Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
I have a question on R65, just for clarifying. All right, because this was well before me. Original agreement with LSI, reviews trying to change as part of Schools of Hope grant project. That's Kathleen High School only?
Correct.
That was a specific grant. That they got.
Correct. Okay, hang on just a second.
Are you waiting for a response?
No, I'm trying to figure out the revision of the original agreement.
You want Maria to tell?
So I would like for somebody to explain, please.
So
Thank you.
we have a contract with LSI to do a chunk of work as part of the School of Hope. It is not changing the dollar amount, it's not really changing the activities, it's changing who's going to write some curriculum units that were built into that project so that we take the burden off the teachers at the school
Okay.
and LSI does more of the work.
Okay.
But the same pieces of work will occur.
I know, because I saw no financial impact, and I was like, okay, how is that possible?
But
All
there is,
right.
but there is a change in who's doing the work and the pieces, so we just wanted to reflect that.
Very good. Thank you for taking work off teachers.
Okay,
It says
very good, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Items R64 through R69. Moving on to R70 through R72. These are the human resource recommendations.
Yeah, I have one, a couple of things on
Okay.
just around that. Just one note. I mean, this is sort of similar to Mrs. Miller's issue. I asked for the underlying spreadsheets for those, I think on March 20th. Still haven't gotten those. I want to be able to put them all together into one spreadsheet and do my own sorting. They're in PDF now.
Yeah, I thought we did too.
Okay, well, if we did, I apologize for that. I will go back and search. I didn't see it. Secondly, related to that, it looks like there's been, particularly at Ridge community, that there've been a few resignations the last few sheets of these. I don't know if that's just a bad period or not. Just wanted to point that out. So.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about items R70 through R72? Item R73, I asked the superintendent if Dr. Akes could come forward and offer some comments before we open the public hearing, and he's agreed to do that. So we'll ask Dr. Akes to come down, offer a few comments, and then we'll open a public hearing, and then we'll have a motion and vote on that. Any questions or comments about item R73? Okay. That's our board agenda review. We'll go back to the work session. Next item on the agenda is Master Board training, and I think that was really just a placeholder as we put some dates together. Is that correct, Ms. Worthington?
There are some dates.
Okay.
Yep.
When will that be decided? Because
Hopefully today, right?
Yeah.
you sent those dates out,
Right.
but I haven't heard anything back. Do we have a date or the next date?
Well,
Why the items?
That's
that's why it's on here, so we can talk about that
Yeah,
and,
5
and,
days that took.
and choose a date or dates. And so what is the pleasure of the board?
I'm good with any of them. Wednesdays.
Hold on, I have to get back to that.
It would just be nice to be not the exact same week as school board meetings. You'd be gone 2 days in a row. So like, I don't know, if September 17th is our work session and roundtable, then I would.
It's not connected to e-agenda. Is that in a email that you have those dates?
It's in the
Oh, in
your-
the description.
In the recommendation.
In the recommendation thing. You got it. Okay.
Yeah, right here.
That's so far out ahead. I'll just do whatever y'all tell me to do.
I'm easy, I just would prefer a different, so that they're not back to back, that would be the only thing.
I say August 21st.
Well, that's back to back, because we got.
Wait a minute.
The 20th is the day we meet.
For some
Right.
reason, I don't have that on there.
Yes, we have a meeting, a school board work session, a meeting on the 20th.
Right, so could we do the 28th then?
I'm good with the 28th.
I'm good with the 28th.
Ms. Miller?
That's fine.
Okay, so the 28th, and then in September,
We just needed one.
Just need one
We
day.
just need one.
It was just options.
oh, okay, so we're good?
Mhm.
Seems like we met more often than that last time. Okay. Next item on the agenda is teacher pay, raises over bonuses, and I think, Mr. Townsend, this is your item.
But I think,
Mr. Wilson, did we do item 7, the Head Start Services report? I don't know that we,
That was an informational item.
so we just, okay, we didn't have discussion.
We
That's
didn't have
fine.
discussion, we're welcome to ask.
No, I just want to
That's
make sure that was covered. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Occasionally, we will ask Ms. Freed to come forward and share some information with us. Most of the time, it's just information.
It's not changed, right.
Okay?
I'd like to but I think what I discussed briefly last time was making this part of the looking ahead, board preferences for the legislative session, like for next year as a general statement, that we prefer funding that allows us to give raises over bonuses.
Do we want to include this in our legislative agenda?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
I think, and I realize it's already done for this year, but, you know.
Okay. So,
I think the more we have in writing, the better.
are we in agreement as a board that we would like to include this as part of our legislative agenda? Teacher pay raises over bonuses?
You mean for the next
Yeah.
legislative session?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for the next.
It's already,
Okay, so we'll make
Yeah,
that.
because bonuses
We're
aren't
talking
in-
about-
well,
2020,
I mean, it'll be the stated policy of us now. We'll add it to the materials
Same later.
for
It's
next
2020,
year.
right?
Yes.
Legislative session
This
for
would be for
2020.
next year's legislative,
But it's,
starting in January.
but it could be our preference now. It's just in terms of printing it, you know, like whatever. I mean, so can we make it our preference now, and then work just I want it to be the official board position moving ahead. Is that okay?
I'm good with that. Are
Fine
you,
with me.
anybody have any concerns with that? So I guess the question would be then, is there a written statement of some sort you'd like to make, or just,
I wrote it down. It's pretty simple. It says the school board wants to be able to provide recurring raises for all its employees. State funding should make that possible before any state level bonus structures are approved. That's my language.
And I would like to recommend, based on that paragraph, that staff draft something and bring it back to us if superintendent's in agreement. I mean, because
Okay.
everything, I'd like to see it come through them so they can tweak
fine.
it if they want to add something else or whatever.
And I think a couple counties may have that in theirs as well, that we can make sure they're aligned so that if we're
Yeah.
saying the same thing, that we're saying the same thing, not.
Superintendent Berg, can you reach out to the other superintendents and find out if they have something similar, so like we all on the same page?
I've talked to the organization.
You know,
Yeah.
kinda like we did with the other ones that y'all put on there,
yeah.
that actually got some motion.
Yeah, I think that was State Representative Killebrew's suggestion that we be coordinated.
That's true.
Okay, very good. New policy request tracking of student suicides, Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, again, I mentioned this last week. I'm open to how the form that we get this in, but I guess I would, you know, I want to know if we have a child who commits suicide in one of our schools, or one of our students who commits suicide and we know about it. I understand there may be times where we're not going to know. I accept that. But what I would like to have also is maybe a cumulative report, because I was told, I think we were told last week that we can track those numbers somewhere.
And that was forwarded as well. Was that not sent to?
What I mean, I'm trying to set up a policy on an ongoing, like every, you know, on a you would give us the information, say, twice a year, you know, halfway through the year and.
You mean make it like a formal
Correct.
report out?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's.
So I guess, Mr. Bridges, would there be some FERPA concerns there?
Yeah.
If you redact the student's information, you just need numbers.
I don't need the names.
Okay. And what do we do currently? Do we have any similar report?
We have the information, obviously, with the individual students' names and all
Okay.
that we maintain for,
Okay.
you know, record keeping and all that. But what we can provide is the total numbers, which we have to maintain that data.
That's what I'm
as
interested in.
needed, just
Okay.
the numbers.
Okay.
And
So-
can you break them down level, elementary, middle, high?
We could, my concern is that honestly, the numbers are so very low right now, as far as our district is concerned, that the smaller they are, the more identifiable they could be based on people knowing about situations or hearing about emergencies at a school or something like that. So if it was in the news or something that there was a emergency at an elementary school and then the data comes out with only one student in elementary, it's gonna be able to kind of identify almost who that could be, so.
Wes, do you have input on that?
Yeah, I think that we will need to be circumspect in how we do this. If you receive information that has personally identifiable student information in it, that is FERPA protected even in your hands. If you receive it in you have a legitimate educational interest in that information and you receive it because of your position as a school board member, it is still FERPA protected.
Okay, sure.
And so we'll probably want to have a further conversation about what the rules of engagement are for what you can do with it and how it can be handled.
Yes, Ms. Warden.
Along those same lines, I'm very concerned about attempted as well.
About?
Attempted, not just follow through. And I won't go into the details of why I'm concerned, but it hits near and dear to my heart. So, you know, I don't know. Never mind.
Well, we all got a pretty specific email last week, right? I mean, about this.
I can't.
Yeah. So, let me see if I can pull this together. So we're talking about maybe a quarterly report of suicides and attempted suicides, but not broken down in any particular fashion. Is that what we're talking about?
I personally would prefer that we have it by type of school, but if the FERPA stuff's gonna get in the way of that, then I'll take just getting the numbers. I mean,
I think we need to be careful not to correlate individual incidents with schools.
No, not
Yeah,
I said type of schools, not individual schools.
But it's.
I'm looking for age, like if it's,
Gotcha.
like that. It's not.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily related to school one way or another. It's an incidence of a suicide or attempt in our district.
Right. Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am.
And once again, like the previous one, could we send it back to staff, let them talk about it and talk with Wes?
I think that's what we're doing.
Oh, we're doing? Okay, and y'all come up with what we can do and see if other school districts report on it and all of that. I mean, make sure, okay.
Well,
yes, sir.
I mean, I don't want to make it contingent on whether other school districts report
No, but it'd be
on it.
nice to see if they already have
Correct,
a kind of
correct.
report
Yeah, I
that
just-
they're using that we could mimic, that's all.
Right. I didn't want it to be a.
And it may be a public health issue that is already tracked countywide.
That's my biggest concern.
So it may be that there is
It's
a
in the
report
community.
that is available through the health department. I don't know, but we can look into that.
And to me, it doesn't even have to be quarterly. You could do it be end of first semester, end of semester if you want to. It's fine with me.
Right.
Okay. So,
Regular.
Dr. Steinke, could you work on that and maybe present something for us?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
And we track the ones that we respond to as a school district.
Right.
If it occurs at home and we don't necessarily respond for any
Understand
action, we don't, it's of course in our district and the student, but we might not, it just kind of depends on the situation.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I just know that we spend a lot of time with the kids, but the majority of the time they are in the community and, you know, it's a community health concern I have, not so much a school, except we're the ones that have to deal with it as you and I have spoken, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
so.
The next item on our agenda, also Mr. Townsend's, is employee investigations.
Yeah, and this is just, again, following up on something I raised last week, and it relates to the good news that in the last year, we've adopted some tracking mechanisms that we probably didn't have in the past. This is one, I just want to make sure if there's a repeat accusation, and I'm open to negotiation on what is reportable, and that I've put in some suggestions that the superintendent is notified. Doesn't mean she has to take any action at all. Doesn't mean there's no presumption that comes with it. It's just made aware that this is the second time we've had some sort of complaint against this employee.
You mean sexual or non-sexual? So we may actually investigate, let's say a teacher or a para or an employee, it doesn't necessarily have to be a teacher, but an employee for theft.
Right.
That may be theft 2 or 3 times. So do you want, again, non-sexual related or non-harassment related?
Quite honestly, the easiest thing to do would be anyone who's got to repeat it, whether it's, I mean, that's the easiest one, and it doesn't come with the presumption of action. It's just a notification.
Okay, so generally I already do that.
Okay, well, it'd be nice to make it policy. I mean, I'm glad you're already doing that, but I mean, I think it'd be nice to, if that's what you're already doing, let's go ahead and codify that in policy. I mean, are you guys okay with that? I mean,
Well, I mean, there are two different issues. One is if gathering information and providing a report, I'm not sure that would require a policy. That's just really gathering information and providing a report. It sounds like now you want a codified policy, but I'm not.
all I want is that somebody, Joe Smith, pops up for a second time in our investigation process. That Ted or whomever says, that's the second time, I'm going to notify the superintendent, just so she's aware. And that's all it is. It's
Right.
nothing more than that.
Okay.
You know, if it pops up a third time, then it's like, I'm going to notify the superintendent. Like, and again, the reasoning for that is the extreme case of what happened in Dade, where you had 6 times, you know, where this guy was investigated. And what I'm trying to do is communicate to the public that we're going to be aware of these things. Again, I'm glad to hear what you're already doing.
So one of the things that Mr. Kirk does actually is, Brian is Tony directly reports to Brian. So Brian will come and tell me, hey Tedra, there are 2 investigations, and both of these investigations have repeat offenders in them. Based on that investigation, just the ongoing investigation, I'll then have a conversation with Mrs. Bird about, hey, here's what we know thus far. No determination has been made, no report has been generated, but here's what we know thus far. If something comes back at the end, after the report is done or finalized, then I'll let her know and I'll update her after the report is done. But generally, she is aware if there are on the secondary or multiple occurrences of someone needing an investigation. She does know.
Well, I appreciate that. What I'm trying to do is communicate a board expectation, or at least mine, that would be the case. It's kind of a, if it doesn't happen in one instance, it would be, we don't want there to be that one instance that falls through the cracks, I guess. Like that's I'm just trying to codify what you're already doing in a way that creates the expectation beyond just your administrative relationship.
So now I understand. This truly would be a codified policy. So I'm not sure where we start with that. Mr. Bridges, could you make a recommendation? Do you draft those initially, or does staff draft those?
Well, I think, I mean, it is a human resources function. I would suggest that perhaps I could sit down with their folks and we could craft something and circulate it.
Okay.
I mean, exactly what you just said. Just take the word generally out of it, and I'm good. I mean, really. I mean, that's what I'm looking for.
Does that work for you?
That work for you? And on
We'll
the
get to
prior one, it seemed like that was really more of a practice than a policy. On
What's
the,
that?
on the first one, the tracking of suicides.
Yeah, if it becomes a practice that we don't have to worry about, I have no problem not putting it on
Okay.
policy. It's fine. I mean, but the problem is if you don't make something policy, it's easy for a practice to fall off over time when people change, etc. So that was why I thought again, these things are less about talking to staff. They're more about talking to the public about what we value and what we're keeping track of as a board. At least that's how I see it.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments? Moving on to school board comments.
I have one question before we go. It's based on an email that I was sent about something on the agenda, and I know the document that, Dr. Sankey, can you, or Rachel, because you're both copied in this email, I don't know where it's at on our agenda, but the media person emailing is referring to an agenda item, the revisions to the SPMP. Is that on the agenda for this evening, and I don't see that?
It's your public hearing.
On the
That's
work
the
session.
public hearing.
No.
I know what it is.
Oh,
I'm
that's-
asking,
It's different.
That's different.
I know what the SPMP is. I'm asking the revisions
Yes.
that are made here. Can you speak to that so the board, because I don't know how many questions we'll have on this evening?
So the district special policies and procedures document, which is the SP and P, which is different than the student progression
Right.
plan, the SPP. SP and P is a document required by the Florida Department of Ed for our policies and procedures for students with disabilities. We update it about once every 3 years, but sometimes legislatively they'll change something and we have to provide updates in between. So on the work session agenda, there was a item for, I forget what it was, item 9.
So it was an informational
It was an
piece.
informational item, and what it is the summary document that was attached is the proposed revisions to the SPMP 71-page document that was also attached.
Right.
We're recommending that to update it as we need to, we make those changes, so it was just for you to see it and know what that was, so that we could then, on the next school board meeting agenda, we'll put the actual revised document for your approval. So we can send it back to DOE.
Will you be addressing that restraint, the subject matter of the changes of the SPMP? Because that's what the email's concerning. Like, they want more information about these incidents and how they're occurring and what we're doing about it.
Well, we responded to or I sent my response to Rachel and Ms. Burr for them to disseminate however necessary for the media. As far as the specific incidents, we would not necessarily do that because they could be further protected as well. It kind of goes into the whole conversation we just had along the same kind of lines as the suicide stuff. But really, when we're talking about restraint and seclusion for our students with disabilities, it's such a large, global, but complicated topic. We just kind of would have to look at how we want to address it and discuss it.
Well, I think we should discuss it based on that our numbers are high, and that's the community's questioning that, and there's legislation for that may or may not have anything done with it this year, but we need to be able to explain the process, if it's this new behavior analyst or these new behavior supports, what we have in place to reduce the restraints for the next work, whenever that's brought back. And I was asked to be copied on the response whenever it's finalized, because if they're gonna come, the community's gonna come to me directly, I should know what the district response is.
So, Ms. Miller, you're making reference to the number of restraints being high.
Statewide, we fall into a category of higher restraints than other districts. The email is referring to subcategories of restraint and seclusion, if it's one group or more than the other, and what we're doing about it as a district to
Right, but
respond.
You're making the reference that our data for this particular area is higher than what? I guess that's.
I can send you where we rank in the state.
Yeah, I looked at the data, but we're not out of line with the other like-sized districts. Just looked at it earlier today. In the reference to the subcategory, that minority students were being restrained more than non-minority students is not accurate when we actually looked at the data. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you want me to pull together.
Well,
for
if
you,
that's,
because-
if our response is that this is the data and you're providing that data to the source, then I would like to be copied on it, since I'm gonna have to.
Sure, I just want to make sure I was getting.
That's the question.
Yeah, what you were asking for.
I can send you the links to, restraint and seclusion. I understand what you're saying compared to like districts, the numbers, but our numbers, have you seen if they've increased or decreased in the last calendar, or the last school
We've looked at
year?
them for the last 3 years, and one of the things that you'll see is they do go up and down just depending on some of the needs of the students. And one of the questions was regarding a specific school, and as we consider it's the school and the nature of the situation, but we are equally concerned to make sure that we're staying in tune with that. And we want to be able to make sure that we're doing everything we can to create the environment where that would not be required, if at all possible. But there are some situations where it is required. So, but it was not accurate that it is not the case that minority students are being disproportionately restrained. It's actually, that's not the case.
I appreciate a response from the district that not only mentions that, but talks about, this is about being proactive with stakeholder management or just informing the community. With the legislation that eventually wants to make changes to the restraint and seclusion laws, it would be positive that if we had a statement to the community that this is where we are, this is how we're improving to reduce these numbers overall, and this is where we're going. Like, it's just hard to get, we don't communicate that well. So when these questions come up, I have nothing to provide.
I understand, and we'll be glad to have boards address specifically what we're doing proactively and how we look at that annually and monthly.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I received a phone call from our employee, Susan Worthington, yesterday, regarding an incident that has occurred, and I've talked to her, she knows that I'm bringing this up, about an incident that occurred last week on Wednesday. And I felt very disrespected as a board member. I think all 7 of us supervise our 3 staff members, Ms. Carol, Ms. Susan, and Mr. West. And I feel that anytime a situation occurs in our office, that we should be apprised about that by whoever finds out first, however you want me to say that. And so the whole incident, whatever it is, I'm not going to go through that publicly here, but I just want to put it on record going forward. I know there's issues about minutes and who's going to take them at board meetings and work sessions. I have contacted Pat McManus, who used to be our board's executive secretary for a number of years. We have never done the board minutes and work session minutes since even before my time. The board voted years ago because it was checked out, I guess, through Mr. Bridges' office that pursuant to state statute, the responsibility of preparing and recording the minutes of school board meetings were that of the superintendent, and our board voted years ago to move that to the superintendent's office. I know that's one of many issues that are being discussed, but as always in the past, I feel like we all have the stake in this, and I would like us to be able to, and I don't feel it's hurting anybody, I just feel like those discussions about responsibilities for the people that work for us ought to lie with the 7 members of the board, and us be given an opportunity to at least, you know, learn about it kind of at the same time rather than 6 days later. And, you know, I'm just going to put it on record. I think very highly of Mrs. Worthington since the time that she's come on board. and the work that she does and everything. And I know that everybody else does as well, but I just want to say that. She's a very valuable team member to us, our 7 school board members. And I was pretty appalled in the way the situation was handled, however it was handled. I'm not going there, it's done, but I'm just asking, moving forward, if there's issues with one of our 3 employees, that the board chair be notified prior to anything being done or said or commented or whatever, number 1. And number 2, when we're talking about responsibilities for our employees, that all 7 of us have input in that, so that we can help shed some light, maybe some institutional knowledge on how things have been handled in the past. Because quite frankly, I personally am absolutely not in favor of giving her the minutes, work session, board meeting, whatever. And I think if you'll look at state statute, we probably need to check. The way we take minutes is ridiculous, because minutes, by Robert's Rules of Order, has to do with actions taken, not Joe said, Mary said, Megan said, Jim said. I mean, we do a lot of that, and whatever, through the years, it is what it is. It's not required on this board member's part. I think we need to look at what is required, and then it needs to be the way it's always been in the superintendent's purview, and move forward on that one issue. But I'm bringing that up only to say, in the future, when we talk about responsibilities, I would like all 7 of us to have a part of it, because I don't want to lose Miss Worthington. I think she's an awesome individual and works so hard on behalf of our school board, and has had to learn so much so quick to get up to speed. And I'm very proud of you and the work that you have done. And I want to be able to take this situation, put it to the side, and let's move forward. I think only the board members know, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I just want to go on record saying I want to be included in decisions made, how our 3 employees, what their responsibilities are, because ultimately I, at the end of the year, have to evaluate each of them on those responsibilities. So, yes, ma'am.
I
Thank you, Ms.
agree with Ms.
Cunningham.
Cunningham, yeah, definitely.
Mr. Townsend, did you have some comments?
I just wanted to echo what Lori said about Susan. Agree completely. I also, pretty perplexing situation. Really, I don't know what to make of it. Except that I have a lot of confidence in Susan. That's the one thing I do know. I appreciate. I think what you described is sort of a twofold thing that's hard to manage because of sunshine. Like, if there is some sort of concern raised administratively, it would be better, I think, for everybody to know that way, or for the chair to know. I just feel like I don't know quite enough about how all this went down. Right. But I share your concerns, and would like us to think through, and maybe the chair can get with the superintendent on this and think through a better way of addressing this in the future. And can I ask a really weird question too? I just want to be clear about this. Does Susan work for us?
Yes.
Is she
She
our?
She is our employee, the 7 of us.
I'd like Mr. Bridges to.
Yeah, there are differences of opinion on that between the different districts. The statute specifically authorizes you to hire and directly employ a counsel and an internal auditor. There's nothing in there that prohibits anything else. Since before I got here, that position is reported directly to the board and is evaluated by the board, and I think those are the salient characteristics that to keep in mind.
I mean, I should also say I have confidence in the chair's ability to handle these things as well, but there's also the simultaneous, all of us involved. Like, so I don't have an answer to what you're saying, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, but here, let me just say this. I do know that in the past, when we've talked about things, I mean, I remember some very poignant conversations about contracts and certain length and stuff. The individuals were sitting right here. We had a pleasant discussion. We said, here's what we need to do. It's not about you and the face sitting in that job right now. This is what we need to do to ensure consistency as we move forward. And as long as you say, we can talk, because we're not voting on it. We are deciding how we are going to supervise and evaluate individuals under us. And so that's where it's different to me than sunshine on something that we would vote in there. And that's why I feel it is not appropriate in any way, my saying a board meeting, but in this roundtable, that's the only time we have to talk about it. And I think we need to discuss it openly amongst all of us.
Ms. Reynolds?
And I just wanted to add to that, I know that you don't like the spotlight being on you, but I think we do all truly appreciate and recognize your value and how much you do for us. But almost to take the same point of when we ask staff for information, if it's gonna take above a certain amount of time, the whole board needs to be involved. If we're moving any major functions to our staff, if we can, the whole board be involved in that, is this something that, I think that kind of is a good rule of thumb. I have complete confidence in you, Lynn, to direct, but if it's something that's gonna take a significant amount of Susan's time at any point, that's something that we probably should all 7 discuss.
Thank you.
I don't think
Ms.
somebody's
Williams?
integrity needs to be called into question, is all I'm gonna say.
So, thank you. Ms.
Well, I like protocol and procedure. Isn't there, don't we have that? That should be in writing. We don't.
Well, I think, as Mr. Bridges indicated,
We need to determine what it is.
It's a little bit of a unique situation in that technically the position does report to the superintendent.
Right.
However, it is by board rule, by state law, I think so.
No, he said it just doesn't have that position. He didn't say it reports to
I
superintendent.
see.
It doesn't say we can't, but it doesn't say we.
He said the only thing it calls for is an attorney and an auditor.
Right, it specifically authorizes those two.
Right.
But the board has, since time immemorial,
Right.
hired, evaluated, supervised its administrative assistant.
And I think that makes it clear that the board chair would be responsible for oversight for that position. And we're meeting hopefully tomorrow morning, and I'm sure we'll work through this, and I'll provide a report.
For what I'm saying, I respect the position of the chair, but I really feel that we all need to be involved. That's all I'm trying to say. I feel like that's because you're asking me at the end of the year to evaluate,
Sure.
but I didn't have any input on what the duties and responsibilities may have changed or might be changing. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, no, and I understand, and I thank you for that input.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, so that gives me direction as well. Any other board comments? Yes, ma'am.
I had 2 comments. That wasn't really a comment. I was trying to get more information. I'd like to add to the agenda to the next work session, returning to 2 board meetings a month. We've had that conversation. It came up again today. And I think that these agendas are way too packed. They go on really long. I wasn't here when they decided to stop meeting twice a month, but to have the discussion again of the pros and cons of having that opportunity to have 2 board meetings a month.
You mean the actual meetings themselves in the evening? Or
Right.
this part of the meeting, of the work sessions?
There were 2, you met more than once, right, for the board meetings?
Yes. But I don't think our
ago.
board meetings are especially long.
No.
I think the agendas are long.
For the board meetings?
So,
I think the items included are significantly. So maybe we can address it in the work session if the board thinks that's the extended work sessions that we're doing, the roundtables for discussion.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I think that's why, so that goes back to the core of some of the things we've been talking about. We used to have 2 work sessions, 2 school board meetings, and I would agree, we weren't covering the things that we probably wanted to talk about fully in the work sessions. So we expanded on that. We called them roundtables, but that was an extension of, or kind of moving back to having plenty of time to discuss the issues as a board that we want to talk about. So
expanding-
those are, in my opinion, and I'll again defer to Mr. Bridges, I think those are official school board meetings.
I think that's how that they should be looked at as official meetings, and maybe that would be the opportunity to expand on a lot of these agenda items. And I encourage that people are in attendance so we can have those good conversations.
They are absolutely meetings of the school board. and with the attendant formalities of notice and minutes.
Okay.
That they are absolutely
What about
minutes of the school
agenda
board.
items,
What do you mean by agenda items?
for the round table extension, whatever we're gonna call it now? There's no agenda items for that, or is there?
No, there is. You just
Okay.
need to let Ms. Worthington know what matters you'd like to see.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing we do with the work session.
Okay, I was just putting that out there for public because I had somebody question that in the community recently, that there were no agenda items
Oh.
on the
Yeah,
round
no,
table.
We have
Oh,
agenda
because we
items.
kind of want.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is for them to be broad and discussed. So, I mean, like,
I'm just sharing.
Well, to the extent that you have,
that was sort
so
of one of them.
one of the things we have on the work session are board comments, so we could have those, and those often occur during those round
Right.
tables. But if you have an item you'd like to include, please let Ms. Worthington know.
I did with my
We'll-
Girl Scouts of America. They're coming with the physicist. So,
Ms. Townsend?
So I think, not to put words in Ms. Miller's mouth, because, but since you put words in my mouth earlier.
You are not allowed to do that, Mr. Townsend.
What I think happens sometimes in our business meetings, the actual voting meetings, is that we race through our votes without much of a discussion for the benefit of the public. And I think one of the reasons for that is we're pretty tired at the end of. I mean, I think honestly, not just that. It's a different kind of meeting. Our regular board meetings are the meetings in which our power gets exercised, to the extent that we have any. And again, Ms. Miller can speak for herself here, but I'd be interested in hearing this discussion next time about whether it would facilitate having more meaningful discussions of the things we're voting on. Because we're kind of covering them at the tail end of the work sessions. We're kind of running through them too. So I'm open to the idea of having an additional business meeting if it helps spread things out. Also, we keep getting these events where we got to vote on something really fast today because it's the only business meeting we have, and we've been kind of unwilling to schedule emergency ones. I'm always a fan of scheduling a meeting as you need it. But I think some of the issues, like maybe if we had a twice a month meeting, my concern about the megahertz system wouldn't really apply because maybe we could wait 10 days and vote on it. But that's my only take on it.
Yes, ma'am.
plus, to tail end on that, I'm all about public comments and stuff, because that's what I thought the roundtable was supposed to be. Remember that whole thing? Then we don't have public comments, but a meeting allows for, like in stone, 3 minutes for public interaction and comments. I just want to.
Right. It is a really good forum for people to come and talk, as we're going to hear tonight, I'm sure.
Even as we just sit there and look at them.
For the record on that, Ms. Forney, I mean, from the beginning, for me on the roundtables, I wanted that to be conversations between us. Like we can't make people not come, and I want them to come and listen. But my intent was always for us to be able to explore things that we don't get to explore in work sessions for what it's worth.
And for what I was saying, just like what happened, we have folks that know a lot more than you or I put together about certain things. So when we discuss it, that's a great time for them to contribute.
Right.
So the board meeting, when folks comment, that's our opportunity to listen and not have a conversation. But what I have done and will continue to do is ask them to come to the roundtables for discussions, and we
don't let them talk.
I absolutely let them talk.
Yeah, we did. We let them talk last week.
Every time, anybody who wants to talk, and typically, if they let me know in advance, I call on them. But if they don't, I didn't see anybody who seemed to want to bring anything forward last time. But if they want to speak, they're welcome to speak at the roundtable. We certainly did that the first time we had it.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to come and talk and speak, and that's where we have a conversation with them, if we want to do that. In addition to that, obviously, our constituents are welcome to meet with any of us at any time and talk to us, and or the superintendent.
Speaking of which.
Well, and to that point, I actually attended the Lakeland City Commission meeting last week to kind of say hi, and I'm gonna start going to those and kind of update them on some of the stuff we're doing and trying to get a sort of a Lakeland area focus on things. And one of the things I noticed is during their citizen comment, they don't have the same wall between the city commissioners and public. There's engagement. They can talk back and forth to them and did, and I thought productively. Like they were able to talk about some issues. And I know we used to do that here, and I think tonight we're going to have some people come about some issues that they're probably going to want to hear responses to. And you know, I think it's, I understand why we did it back when we did it, but as the guy who probably gets yelled at the most when somebody comes, I wish we would not, you know, I wish we would let people talk directly to us and have some engagement back. I think, again, tonight, there are people who are going to want to hear people's views on some things. And, you know, you know, so we'll see. I'm just going to throw that out to maybe we allow some ability to respond to the public tonight, particularly given who's you know, who's likely to be coming.
Okay, so, I mean, changing the policy is up to the board. If y'all want to make a change in the way we engage with the public, that's up to you. As it relates to this evening, on the issue of guns in classrooms specifically, I'm going to ask the superintendent to speak to that before we have public comments, so that she will share with them what our current policy is and what we're currently doing. Correct, Madam Superintendent? Okay.
That's good, because my comment was I've been hit with emails.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So we have a program, as you all know, that has garnered national recognition, and I have folks from all over the country call me periodically, and I know they call the superintendent, and so she's going to speak about that before we invite public comment. Do we, and I need to hear from you, do we want to also have someone offer comments after those folks speak? I have to believe that once the superintendent shares what we're doing, that most of that will be addressed. I think so.
It's not just them.
Okay.
I just think there are intense moments that should probably be addressed. I mean, I kind of went along with this policy in the sake of good humor to begin with. I'm saying I would like, with it, you know, you're the chair. You have the right to shut things down if things get out of hand. I think we ought to be able to talk to our constituents when they talk to us.
Well, what I would offer is this, that and what I do typically is I offer to the folks who speak to us, if they like, they're welcome to meet with any of us, or welcome to meet with the superintendent. Typically, I will refer them. I'll ask her to have someone visit with them. I usually do that. And then also we have the roundtables. So I will invite them to those roundtables for further discussion if they want. I think that's where you have the best discussion. But if the board wishes to do something else, certainly that's your call. I would be hesitant to implement that tonight. It's a little quick for me to get ready for that. Yes, ma'am.
Can we have further discussion on this?
Sure.
I agree with you. And also, you being the chair, I've sat through some that I was like, Mr. Wilson, but I was in the audience. You can tell them to stop. But if maybe we could talk about if someone wants to respond, because I've also stood at that lectern and said some really meaningful things, and just looked at all these blank faces.
Right.
So if there's someone who has something to say about a particular subject, if we could notify you with a light or something, so you could call on them. And if it does get out of hand, which it's gotten out of hand multiple times, for you to be able to shut it down as the chair, that they won't address people or be negative or whatever. I think to have that option as a board member, I would prefer the option to say, you know what, that touched me. I'd like to talk to this person, and just notify you to ask your permission to speak. And then you also be able to use your position to hold off if it gets too out of control.
Okay.
We'll get you a gavel.
That seems to be the consensus, so we'll do it.
And please don't forget to explain to them.
Say at the beginning.
If we're not, I thought we were going to discuss it when we're going to do it tonight.
We're not going to do it tonight. I think we
Okay.
can discuss it at the next work session.
remind them that they're not gonna get comments from us, because remember,
No,
I brought that up to you.
I mean, I'm listening to the board, and what I'm hearing is that you want to change, we can implement it tonight.
Oh,
It's up to you. It's up to whatever people
I mean,
think.
y'all gotta make sure, I mean, that, I don't know that there's
I
four of
could
us
go
getting
either way.
it tonight. I mean, I'm for it, but
I think I've seen head
I'm
nod.
okay if I wanted to speak and I notified you
And
and you
that-
called me, I'm not, that's okay with me.
And that's really what I'm.
To respond.
To
Yes,
respond.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking
So
about.
if
If
you
I
don't
You might
see,
not have a
You just don't
response.
press your light.
Right.
so if
Okay.
somebody wishes to respond, all you do is press your light.
Right.
Now, let's be respectful
Yeah.
of the superintendent
Yeah.
and her staff as we do that.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that the comments we make may reflect on her and her staff, so we want to make sure that we keep that in mind. But yeah, absolutely, so if somebody
But
presses
the
the
other
button, and
thing
wants to
is
respond,
being respectful. If we only give them 3 minutes, we
Not
can't ramble on.
you're right, exactly.
for 7 minutes.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Because I remember that happening in the past, and they're like, really, I get 3 minutes and you can just,
I think that's my greatest concern from my perspective. This, and I say this each time, this is their opportunity to talk to us and for us to listen. And so that's kind of my take on it. But again, if y'all want to have some input, we can do that. We'll implement that and make
I
it
too
happen.
was just gonna comment that it would, if it's an issue that needs to go to staff and that we have a staff member available that they can talk to, we may wanna nod to the superintendent, is there somebody that you want them to meet with before we all start to respond to this?
Yeah, I typically do that.
Just, right, but I'm saying, but in the past, we haven't commented ourselves, so
Okay.
just to,
All right, so this new practice, we'll start that tonight. And if somebody has some comments they'd like to make, press your button and we can make some comments. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, that was one thing, because I have all these emails from, you forwarded some to the entire board.
Well, I forwarded it to Ms. Workington, she sent it to me.
Well, yeah, well, through her, and then I tried to make sure whatever I got, I sent out. But, so that was my first thing. I wanted to thank, Dr. Sankey for this, little spreadsheet she provided me a couple months ago with all the LEA contacts and facilitators, and also the, actual duties of those folks. I don't know where I got that from, but I appreciate it, because, you know, some of, it, you know, as I looked over these, some of these folks that don't have either or, and the counselors are doing them, and I know you're aware, but I just want to put it out there for public record. I've tried a couple times to talk about this, but this is kind of what the direct services, indirect, and then this is the program management piece. And the counselors are telling me they need an MTS facilitator with curriculum full-time. I'm just putting it out there. That the, especially elementary schools, because they end up doing pretty much the counselors everything. And I have a list I can make you if you would like of all the things that they have to do that they have given me. Above the counseling realm, I would be glad to provide you a copy of that. And what they would like to be able to do is up here in this corner. And that was a meeting at someplace, I couldn't tell you where, but wanted to share that with you. And then, of course, Mr. Hill, I'm going to ask you again, but I've already emailed him about the concerns, how we're coming from the October meeting of PEA, and the behavior in the classrooms. Teachers are burning me up on emails, so it is not happening. Yes, sir.
So, we have been working over a period of time since I've been on board as deputy superintendent. One of the things that we've done is work closely with PEA, Mary Ann, and in addition to that, ASBA. We've been out to schools. Let me frame it this way, and I've shared it a few times through the process. We definitely identified some areas that are on the radar as a concern for our school-based personnel, for our students, and for all stakeholders of Polk County Schools. And through the process of really analyzing, trying to really figure out what are the core key issues, and really be able to zero in on those, we have, through quite a bit of conversations and looking at information. Primarily, we've looked at anecdotal records, and we've looked at a lot of that data that comes through surveys and those pieces. We've identified the discipline piece as one of the key areas that has been problematic. And to better serve our students, to better serve our school-based personnel, to better serve our entire staff, we've been working diligently. We challenged a team of district leaders to really look at the barriers, the challenges. They are significant, obviously. They are complex. And we have been working to build a comprehensive plan that addresses the school discipline and responds to student behavior in a way that supports all those stakeholders. We will be presenting the frameworks of that in the May work session. We've made good progress. We still have some pieces to build out, but I want to emphasize that because of the complexity of the situations, that we have been really working diligently to identify all the resources, make sure that we have a very comprehensive plan, and make sure that we're in a place, in a position to launch that. Along with that, as you know, we've started a work with the district management group that will support that process as well. And the goal or the vision, and I truly believe this, that once we get this implemented and working, the comprehensive plan, along with going through that process from the district management group, we're going to see some very systemic strategies that we can employ over time. And so the pieces that have been what we would consider low-hanging fruit, those things that we could run to and fix or correct, we are doing that in a continual process. It's kind of like building a bicycle while you're riding it on a downhill slope. And so we'll continue to support our schools. Our teams have worked diligently. Our regional superintendents have been working diligently, all of our school personnel. But I'm very excited about where we're at, and I believe we've made good progress.
So
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fortney. We have a discipline meeting at 4 o'clock, so we're going to need to either wrap this up or move the discipline meeting back. What's the pleasure of the board? What do y'all want to do? Are we ready? We're wrapped up? Okay, so we have a discipline meeting at 4 o'clock
In here or in there?
in the auditorium. So if the computers will not be there in time for the meeting, so you want to take a quick look at the items here. All right.
And Mr. Chair, I did need to address this very briefly.
Okay.
At the last work session, the board asked me to craft a letter that could go to the legislature talking about the vouchers for private schools. I have done that. I have copies here rather than tempt the sunshine gods by distributing this and inviting conversation. I'll distribute it to you hard copy. If you like it, you can authorize it this evening, and the superintendent and the board chair can sign off on it, which is what we've done occasionally in the past. It's been several years since we've done one of these. I will let you know that when I inquired of other districts, I was interested in this for the sake of solidarity and consistency and whether anyone else had done something like this. The other districts that responded indicated that they've addressed it by including language in their legislative platform. And the language that a couple of them provided was substantially similar to, quote, halt the further privatization of public education through such means as the corporate tax credit scholarships, and in the use of public funds to support voucher programs that are not held with the same educational and accountability standards as public schools. So that's how they have dealt with it, but there is absolutely nothing to keep you from authorizing the chair and the superintendent to sign off on a letter expressing your opposition to House Bill 7075. And specifically to public funds being used for private education and entities that are not held to the same accountability standards.
And I'm gonna ask Mr. Bridges to,
This is not this isn't, yeah, this isn't what we discussed.
okay,
By the time I think we approve this and it gets to the governor, this is over.
They can go out tomorrow.
Yeah, but it also, this is not what we discussed.
Is it not? My notes indicated you wanted something to go to the House and the Speaker expressing opposition to 7075 on the basis that it did not include the same accountability standards as are applicable to public schools.
We had talked about the two, the companion bill in the House and the Senate, I believe it's 1444 and I think 1027, that were the do not hire list for private schools. That it basically takes the DOE's do not hire list and holds private schools and charter schools accountable for that same list. And recognizing the fact that they're doing something about that.
Mm-hmm. If you would like, I can add that. You can simply authorize it in the.
There was also identifying a specific person who would have, and maybe I'm not seeing this, but this is one of the reasons I asked to have this set several days before the meeting so we could review the.
Yeah, I apologize. I was concerned about the sunshine, the sunshine temptation when you circulate things and create a conversation that's not in the public room.
Yeah,
But we can add those two things and have it good to go out tomorrow if you wish.
I'm all for standing up for ourselves, so.
Yeah, I mean, if it's this or nothing, I would sign on to this.
Well, we can certainly add those
What were you
add
gonna
those
say,
two
Mr.
items.
Townsend? What, you said something?
That identifying a specific person who has, for lack of a better word, for whom the buck stops. Who is the superintendent of Alger schools, for lack of a better word? Who's that there be a person
And some sort of an office of accountability.
Correct, with a clear.
And just request the creation of an office of accountability.
They're in school choice, right? Office of School Choice.
Well, I've heard a bunch of different things.
Okay.
I mean,
so we probably need to get something out if we're gonna say something. So
But
Mr.
I
Bridges
can
is
add
gonna,
those things.
this is not gonna influence anybody, but it does put us on record as to what's acceptable and what's not.
exactly.
So I think I'll make sure we accommodate Ms. Riddle's concerns, and I don't want there to be any confusion. Like, I think we agreed not to thank them, but to acknowledge that we acknowledge that you have, that there is some effort at, so if you add those two bullets, then I think,
Okay.
Done.
but I do like the opening.
Cool, thank you.
I want to see it before I approve it, because I do not agree to send this.
Good deal.
Why would you not?
I'm strongly opposed.
The letter.
We're adjourned.
Yeah.
We are moving to, just one minute.